across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And whether you are listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you very much for your company. I'm, of course, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And if you do miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has hit back at critics of her asylum reforms announced in the Commons yesterday. Talked about them a lot on the show yesterday morning. She's told them she knows how divisive immigration was because she's been called an effing P word. You know, I can't say those words on the show. Home Secretary is accused of stoking division by Labour backbenchers, Greens, Lib Dems, all the usual suspects as she unveiled her controversial plan, coming under fire from all sides, but getting quite a lot of support from the Tories and from Reform. Now, as part of the Home Secretary's plan for asylum reforms, migrant families whose asylum claims have been rejected will be deported if they refuse cash incentives to leave. But currently, the maximum amount offered is £3,000 per person. So a family of 5, yeah, you're doing all right, aren't you? The Home Office will also trial increased cash incentives. I mean, why don't we just give everyone £1 million to leave? It would probably be cheaper, wouldn't it, in the long run, to encourage them to leave? A bit of a backlash against that. And if it couldn't get even more insane, as the front page of the Sun has revealed, illegal migrants awaiting deportation are getting maths tutors. Oh, you try and get a maths tutor if you're your local bog standard comp and the maths teacher's gone on maternity leave or disappeared and you're trying to get through your maths GCSE. No, free maths tutors, exercise classes and access to private GPs. Well, wouldn't we all like that? Welcome to Britain in 2025, folks. We're also going to be talking about Reform leader Nigel Farage. He's going to be announcing his alternative budget this morning with a plan to save £25 billion a year in spending cuts, including cutting back foreign aid to just, wait for it, £1 billion a year. I have a funny feeling you're going to like the sound of that, guys. Kemi Badenoch is speaking right now. She's holding a press conference alongside her Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride ahead of next week's budget as well. So a very, very busy day. We'll keep you up to date on what everyone is saying. Don't worry, we don't take this stuff live, as you know, because we like you too much. Anyway, all that coming up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, well, as always, anything you want to talk about, but in particular, the asylum reforms, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's plans to deport failed asylum seekers, including families. Will they succeed? Will they actually tackle illegal migration? Bearing in mind, no one's talking about smashing the gangs anymore. And that was what the government said they were going to do. They definitely haven't done that. We've seen, what, a 40% increase in people coming across the channel. So the gangs ain't been smashed. Certainly the boats ain't been stopped, as Rishi Sunak, the last Tory Prime Minister, promised. So do you think Shabana Mahmood's plan will succeed? And what do you make of the freebies? As, again, I mean, £3,000 for each member of the family to agree to leave, free maths tutors, free this, free that, free accommodation, free everything, when most British people right now are absolutely struggling. People earning good money are struggling to pay their bills right now, and our money is literally being given away, just like monopoly money, to people who have no right to be here. Why the hell are we paying people to get on planes when they've got no right to be here? Oh, well, it's to stop them making a fuss and having more appeals. Well, if they thought their appeals would win, then they would carry on with the appeals, wouldn't they? So they know they haven't got a chance. I'm sorry. If you actually have to just manhandle people onto the planes and strap them into the planes, I'm happy to volunteer to do it. If you've got no right to be here, you're gone. And no, I don't think you should get a single penny of taxpayers' money to go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and you know this bit off by heart. I always get it wrong. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say that joining me today, I haven't seen him for a little while, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Morning.
Good morning, Julia.
Looking very dashing today, if you don't mind me
as are
saying,
you,
sir.
as always.
Oh, darling. Oh, thank God for a trowel full of makeup, eh? That's all I can say. Shabana Mahmood, you're a lefty Liberal. Although you talked a lot of sense on quite a lot of things lately, so it makes me wonder whether he's coming over to our side. Gradually, the facts will win them over, folks. But Shabana Mahmood, people are saying she's very impressive. She hasn't done anything yet. She hasn't done anything other than, as Justice Secretary, release a load of criminals onto the streets. So when the prisons were overfull. So we have to wait and see whether she can turn words into actions. But she's had to defend her plan to deport failed asylum seekers, including families with children. What do you make of her plans, as what we know about them so far? We haven't seen the bill yet, the Act of Parliament. She's got to get it through. What do you make of the criticisms of her from the left, from the right? Doesn't go far enough, goes too far. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think, this is the biggest rewriting of our asylum rules in generations, if not, more than a generation. And so it's quite significant. The idea that you don't have the automatic right to bring your family here as an asylum seeker, that you can every 30 months be reassessed whether you're sent back to your home country. So Syria, for example, which has become safe quite unexpectedly. You could see lots of safer. I mean, I've been to Syria. It's a beautiful country. I think many Syrians would quite like to go back that came here. So, I think it's a good idea. I also think that, you mentioned the criticism from the left. So the Green Party MP, Carla Denyer, was saying that it was stoking division, and so did a Liberal Democrat MP, which, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Shabana Mahmood was very angry about, because she said, she knows racist division better than any of those people lecturing her.
Shall we play a little clip of that before you carry on? And obviously edited. Have you got kids listening? This is what Shabana Mahmood had to say on basically the idea that, stoking division. This was actually to a white Lib Dem shadow Home Office minister, a white man. This is what Shabana Mahmood had to say.
Unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see, and that it is all in fact just extremist right-wing talking points. But this system is broken, and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, Benjamin, that Shabana Mahmood is almost saying we have to do something about it because I've received racist abuse, as have many other people of colour, called an effing P word. I'm not saying words. She got rebuked, actually, in the Parliament. You're not supposed to use that language, even if you're quoting someone else in Parliament. But she's almost saying, well, because there's all this division, that's why we need to act. But basically, she's kind of blaming the racists for why we need to deal with the asylum system, isn't she? But no, we need to deal with the asylum system because it's unfair to have a load of people who've got no right to be in this country being in this country. Isn't that? That's got nothing to do with whether someone calls her a horrible, nasty, abusive, racist slur.
Well, I think she was saying two things. One is that she didn't want to be lectured on what division looks and feels like by people who've probably never been on the receiving end of it. She knows.
I'm called a gammon. Does that count?
She,
not bad, is it?
I've called you worse. So
on air.
Yeah. So she was saying about how she doesn't want to be lectured by those people, because when you have these kind of divisions in society, the people that are on the harshest end of it are people that look like Shabana Mahmood. So she understands what the question is. I think the second part she was saying is not that the racists are determining the policy in some way, but that if you don't resettle how we deal with asylum seekers, then you will break the consensus for a generation. And so you have to change what the government is doing, what the country is doing. Otherwise, you're going to get a situation where people don't want to help or take anybody, which I think, certainly people like Shabana Mahmood don't want to end up there.
We are totally in that scenario now. I mean, JK yesterday took a call from, a voicemail from a woman called Sarah, and they played it out again today. And it's very, very clear. I mean, she's like, I'm done. I've had enough. People, I don't care anymore. I don't care. And that's the point. When I read stories now about, X number of asylum seekers on a dinghy in the Channel have died, and I don't want anyone to die. And we absolutely need to rescue people in that scenario because we are civilised human beings. But I don't really care. You're in a safe country, and you've chosen to take this absurdly risky situation. If you're putting a kid on those boats, as far as I'm concerned, you need to be prosecuted for putting your child at risk. But I don't care. It's just not my problem anymore. I just don't see why the whole of the first world needs to take on all the problems of the third world, and it's our problem. Because fundamentally, and especially the left insisting we do that, the left are the ones who say, oh, don't get involved in things going on in the third world. Don't. We should take everyone from Syria, but we absolutely shouldn't protect them from being bombed by Assad when he was in power in the Syrian war. And they voted in Parliament against us taking action and getting involved. I just have so little time for it. And I just think most people in the West, and we're seeing this across Europe, seeing it in America, America, and frankly we're going to be seeing it across other countries when they start seeing the serious same numbers of asylum seekers from, or let's face it, illegal economic migrants coming from godforsaken basket case countries who do not share our culture and have no intention of coming here and assimilating and making a contribution. That they are going to just go, pull up the drawbridge, build the walls higher, put barbed wire on the top, nobody in, nobody out, end of. And that is, I think, where we're going to go.
I mean, I do think we have a responsibility. We have a moral responsibility
to who?
To people that are in the most heinous conditions, that have been through incredible traumas of war.
That's about 3 billion people.
Right.
How many of them are we going to take?
But this is the point, right? So yet there has to be a consensus and agreement
on who will
on
take.
how many.
Right. So every single woman and girl in
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan, right? Every single man who's been conscripted to this army in Eritrea. Who else are we going to take? Everybody?
There's a lot of people
Every
in Khartoum and
persecuted
Sudan.
Christian in Nigeria. How many do we take?
But of course we can't take everybody.
So who do we
Nobody
take? We just
suggests
choose the
that.
young men who've paid the people smugglers? Who do we take?
No, but I think the idea that we shouldn't take anybody when people have put their lives at risk to
This
get
is my
here.
thing, and I've asked people on the left. I remember asking Yvette Cooper this long before she was Home Secretary, and again she stopped coming on the show. What a surprise! But it's really, really simple. Give me a number. Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000?
Well, I would say
Is it 500?
100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
That's a year.
Yeah.
We take 100,000 people from these countries a year.
Well, I think at the moment we take something like 120,000.
Yeah, it's too many.
So that would be less. But the question is about being able to vet them, about being able to assess them, about being able to integrate them. And one of the
can't integrate 100,000 people a year.
Well, you
can't, because no country's been able to do it. Look, tell me a country in the world that's been able to do that.
One of the big problems is that when people arrive in this country or other European countries, they often are surrounded only by people from their own background. There's an activist I know called Luai Ahmed, who's from Yemen. He's a gay man who went to Sweden. He's now a Swedish citizen. But he often talks about how when he arrived in Sweden, he was surrounded by people more radical than those he was with in Yemen, and there was no integration by Swedish society. Now, he clearly has integrated heavily to European culture, and he's a great defender of it. But he speaks about that problem. And so I think that is an issue to resolve.
But you can't stop those
nobody
ghettos growing.
Is immoral.
You can't stop those going. No, but I think that's where we're going, because how do we decide? But 100,000, the idea that our country should take 100,000 people every single year from the war-torn or basket case kleptocratic corrupt governments is absurd. So the British people simply won't have it. And if you're saying they're the legal ones, they will still be the illegal ones, because the idea that most of these young fighting age men who are getting on the dinghies are going to go, oh, well, I'll go through the legal route. Well, they're not the ones who are going to get in on the legal route, so they'll still be coming too. So then we're going to end up with 220,000 a year.
But for many of these countries,
it's not going to fly.
There isn't a legal route into the UK.
Because we don't want them.
If you're fleeing Sudan, which is the worst crisis in the world right now, there is no legal route unless you come across, obviously it's not legal, but it's the route they will use across the channel. And so saying that they came illegally, well, they're not illegal. There is no other option.
Do you remember Syria in 2015, when we were talking about absolutely dire straits, and lots of Europe, Angela Merkel in Germany went, yep, open the doors, come on in. They ended up, 1 million extra people. By the way, the unemployment rate, the crime rate, you just off the scale. Absolute disaster for Germany. That's partly fueled the AfD's rise, and quite understandably. But you're in this scenario where this country, David Cameron said, we'll take 5,000 a year. We'll take 20,000 in total refugees from Syria, 5,000 a year over 4 years, and that's what we'll take. Castigated in the media. The Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, Green, everyone absolutely outraged by this. The media class horrified by this. When they did a poll, the majority of Britons said that was the right number, or most said it was too many. The British people don't want these people here, and they don't for very sensible reasons. They know they're not going to make a contribution, they know they're not going to integrate, they know they're not going to assimilate, and they know they're going to end up costing us lots of money and causing problems, and they're right.
I think that's completely wrong. And actually the story of Britain in the last 80 years is that we have often taken people as refugees and they've integrated very effectively to our society. Our story of taking in Jewish refugees is one that most European countries do not have. We did it, and it was a great work.
Europeans fleeing the Nazis is rather different from taking in people with a completely alien culture.
But hang on, so you say that we shouldn't take anybody in. So you say...
Why taking Ukrainians is very popular.
But hang on, this is my point. You say we shouldn't take anybody in as a refugee.
No,
so
I'm not saying we shouldn't take anybody. I'm saying that's where the British public are we don't want it, we're done.
So
we're done.
You want to turf out the, I don't know how many Ukrainians who are in Britain right now.
They're not refugees, they're actually on a specific scheme.
But I mean, they are refugees,
No, they're on a
really.
very specific scheme where when Ukraine war ends, they go home. That is the actual basis of the scheme. It's a legally...
But they're still here, and they'll be probably here for quite some years yet, sadly. Those are numerous, far more numerous than Afghan refugees we've taken in the last 3 or 4 years. And so,
have we seen a massive issue with lack of integration and you know, and extremist plots and terrorists? No, I don't think we have. But Funny that. I wonder why.
You think a middle-class, educated Ukrainian has less of a right to refuge than someone who risked their life with Allied forces in Afghanistan against the Taliban, who worked with Britain?
The people who worked with our forces, I think that there's support from the British people for those who worked as interpreters and worked to help save the lives of our British forces. Absolutely, absolutely.
But people now are saying that we shouldn't take any Afghans because they do have disproportionate crime rates.
They're saying
and so that means
no one has said that we shouldn't take Afghan interpreters.
They are, absolutely. If you say no refugees, that's precisely what you're saying.
That's not because
they would be refugees.
That's a different scheme.
So
it's a different scheme. It's not people who just randomly turn up on a boat.
I'm afraid I think it is inherently racist to say that we should take people from Kiev, we should take people from Ukraine, which, you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't, we should, but the idea that someone in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, in the worst genocide in the world, should not be able to have any possibility of help is wrong.
There's a specific argument about taking people from Europe, a nearby country, allies, and taking them on a temporary basis. And people who are thinking, look, here's the thing, we can't take everyone from Sudan, can we? Can't take everyone from Eritrea, can't take everyone from Somalia. The vast majority of those people go to neighbouring countries. Why can't the people who come here also go to those neighbouring countries? Because the vast majority of people who have fled those wars are now safe. They're not in great conditions. And I know, and that's awful. I would suggest that one of the reasons why people want to come to this country is because we are a country that has fought over the centuries and over the decades of the last 125 years to actually keep our country safe, to defend our values, to extend our freedoms, to make our country stronger and better. And men and women, but mostly men, have gone to the trenches, gone to the front lines and laid down their lives to fight for our country to be where it is. I would suggest some of those men might be better off, actually their country would be better off, if they stayed and fought for their countries and fought for democratic rights, economic stability, fought against the tyrants and actually defended their own country, rather than going, I'm going to leave the women and the children and the elderly and I'm going to sod off to Britain and make a new life for myself. Maybe those aren't the people we want. Going out on a limb there, Benjamin.
I don't think famine-ridden, frail men and women in Darfur being slaughtered in an ethnic cleansing have much option to realistically fight.
Would you stay and fight?
Well, they don't have much ability to fight when they have no access to money, to food, to weapons. So how do they fight? And of course, 2/3 of the world's refugees go to neighbouring countries.
Yeah, exactly. So why do we need to take the others if they can go to neighbouring countries?
The country that's taken the most refugees is Jordan.
Most of the countries that are basket cake countries, it's not because they were colonised, it's not because of any nasty thing the West has done. It is largely because they have got completely corrupt, kleptocratic or lunatic religious governments. I'm sorry. I wish they didn't. I'm actually very supportive of the sort of the Bush doctrine, this idea that you go in and you actually liberate people from, the likes of the Saddam Husseins and whatever. It doesn't tend to work out very well for those people, though. You're getting rid of Gaddafi, getting in Libya, getting rid of Saddam Hussein in Iraq or wherever. It tends not to work out very well. Maybe we can't solve all the world's problems, but maybe, you know what? Maybe it's not our responsibility. Maybe solving all the problems in Africa and all the problems in the Middle East where they don't directly impact on us isn't actually our responsibility. And maybe those people should be responsible for their own countries. That's an option.
On the question of going in, I mean, I've been to many of the countries we're talking about.
You are very well travelled.
And one of the surprising things, when I was in Iraq this time last year, I wondered, as a Brit and with what happened in the war in Iraq in 2003, would they hate us? Actually, they were far more animated about the failure when ISIS was coming in and the failure of the US and the UK and Europe to go in and stop ISIS when they were slaughtering Iraqis. The same in Syria. They were more angry that we didn't help then than the invasion in 2003 in Iraq, which tells you a lot, And many of the people that end up here, the question that Shabana Mahmood puts, that you could be sent back after, I think, 2.5 years if it's safe, many of those refugees would want to go back given the chance.
Yeah, but they often don't. I mean, we haven't got to any other topics. This does not surprise me. Quite a lot of people want to have their say on the phone lines. That's absolutely for sure. Let me just mention also, just say we've got Kemi Badenoch. She's giving a pre-budget news conference right now, and she is talking about the next budget and saying that Rachel Reeves will talk about the wicked Tories, the black hole in the public finances. So she's going to claims that basically Rachel Reeves is going to put up people's taxes, spend more money on benefits. I mean, that is absolutely true. She's calling on the government to use their plan to make £47 billion of savings, including slashing £23 billion from the welfare bill, and says if this Labour government scraps the two-child benefit cap, as has been strongly hinted, Kemi Badenoch says, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back. I'd certainly support that. I've had some rows on and off there with Nigel Farage about that, because I think they're insane on that. But Nigel Farage, at the current time, with Zia Youssef, his policy chief, is unveiling his plan to deal with the budget black hole, and he's saying they can fill it in part with a massive cut to foreign aid to just £1 billion a year. I think it's 14 or 15 at the moment, down to £1 billion a year. I've got to be honest with you, very popular with voters, that one.
Well, I think needless to say, I think it would be wrong. And actually, I think it relates to what we just said, right? You know, our international development serves two purposes. One is hopefully to stabilise some of these areas where there's sort of deep poverty, disease and war. And so actually, is it not going to lead to more people trying to flee if those countries don't get international aid from us in the US, which is heavily cut?
But it's who gets the aid, isn't it? We know kleptocratic governments tend to take an awful lot of it. It's a lot of NGOs. I mean, highly paid executives. Everyone's starting to say, I mean, does much of this aid actually go to the people who really need it? And often when we're giving aid to countries like, Pakistan, or we're giving country India, I mean, they can afford nuclear programs and they can afford, send rockets to the moon. What on earth are we doing giving aid to their people?
But then, well, because
what's it got to do with us?
But I think there's a massive self-interest in doing it, because you see China with its Belt and Road Initiative, in which it's lending money and helping people build infrastructure in Africa and Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean.
It's putting everyone on the payroll, so they'll do their bidding.
Exactly.
Well, we should do that. No,
it's quite cynical. It's strategic, and I think it's probably effective.
It's not quite cynical. It's very deliberately cynical. It's very, 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 very dark. We should have been doing the same, rather than going, oh, here's some money for some K-pop band or something.
But I think that's why, if you were to slash 90% of the international development budget, as Nigel Farage is going to suggest, well, that would mean we have no biters. I mean, the part of the world that's going to have the fastest economic development this century is Africa, which is where much of the development goes.
Tell you what, if you really want to help these countries, what you do is just slash your tariffs so they can actually trade with us and new added value, rather than just selling us agriculture, because that would be the absolute important. By the way, it's one thing the EU doesn't do: massive big tariffs on African countries and poorer countries to get their money, their goods into our countries. Right, we've got so much more I want to talk about, including this attack on ticket outs. We shall see what comes of that. Lots more to talk about with Benjamin. It's already got heated. It's 25 votes. Love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Anything you want to talk about? If you want to come in on our row, go for it. And lots more top guests throughout the show. I'm very excited, actually, first time actually getting him on the show. Maurice Glassman, Lord Glassman at the Labour peer, who's actually been talking an awful lot of sense. He's going to be on the show in this hour, so as all our guests thought. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
News coming this December. talkTV app is moving to Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. Don't honestly, which other make. Bishop Butter with me, Butterworth with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Of course, this is talking about how many of the world's sort of, broken countries, basket case countries, how many of their populations are we going to take? Just a few billion. Well, why don't we all just move, 10 asylum seekers into our homes? And, I've got a very small, very, very, very size. There's a spare bed. A single bed in the spare room. I mean, I could get at least 5 people in there, I'm sure. That's what you liberal lefties think we should do, shouldn't you? What do you make of he's happy with it?
I think the war is bad enough without having to live with you.
There is that. I'm quite a good cook, though. Quite a good cook. I keep the heating on. What can I say? Anyway, Siobhan is making all these announcements of what she's going to do. She's getting it from all sides, actually. Also got Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage as are all making speeches at the same time. It's very interesting to see because the BBC chose. They won't be not the leader of the opposition. So that's interesting, rather than Nigel Farage, beholden to Nigel Farage, you know that, apparently, according to the lefties. Let's go to your messages about the Home Secretary's plan to deport failed asylum seekers, including families. Will it succeed in tackling illegal migration? Tell us why it will, tell us why it won't. You'll get in touch on texts and tweets saying, Michael says, most likely all talk and no action, but it's good to see Labour imploding more. We could stop the boats in a day if we really wanted to, but they don't. Andy says, no, she won't succeed. She never intended for any of her rhetoric to actually become law. Oh God, they've got to get it through Parliament. They may end up having to get it through Parliament using Tory votes, won't they? James says they'll probably say it's working, but the results will say something different. Sam says, no, we must not fall for all the fake drama. And Jeff says, looking at how many Labour MPs oppose the plans, it won't even get through Parliament. And Kevin says, everything is broken due to 14 years of Tory neglect. There's no way of getting on top of our problems without a temporary halt to all immigration. And Joe says, no, of course they won't succeed. It's all talk as usual. Not much faith there. Herbie is on the line in Harrow and wants to have his say. Morning to you, Herbie. What do you want to say?
Oh, God, Julie, where'd you start, for God's sake? Oh, my
It's only Tuesday.
Gracious me.
Don't lose faith in the week just yet.
It's only Tuesday. Julie, how in God's name can a government say that we're going to give 3,000 to deport immigrants, illegal immigrants, out of the country when we're in such a state ourselves? We put them in power to look after our interests that we paid them to look after and do. Not to give it away as if it was their money. We'll just give it away, it's our money. No, it's not your money, it's our money. It's time we had a deal with the government. They've got to be answerable and accountable for the money they're wasting and spending. They think our interest. It's not our interest, it's their interest. It's only their big ego. That's all it's for.
Yeah,
absolutely, totally.
I do agree with you. I mean, and some of the money, again, we paid the 500 quid to the Ethiopian who'd sexually assaulted the 14-year-old girl when he was staying at the Bell Hotel in Epping. And people say, well, it's cheaper than going through all the fights, the legal fights. But it's not as cheap as just literally handcuffing him, strapping his legs together and carrying him onto the plane, is it?
No. Julie, look, as I say, it's not their money. Personally, I'd done a campaign many years ago when I got upside down in Trafalgar Square, see it on the internet, when money was sent through my pocket. What I'd like to do, I'd like to get all the MPs that have voted for this and hang them upside down and get the money out of their pockets as well, so we can pay everybody. I'll tell you that for nothing. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And again, they just don't realise. They just, it's £3,000 here, £3,000 there. I mean, wow, these are huge sums of money. £3,000 is such a huge sum of money for the vast majority of people in this country. It really is. It's not money down the back of the sofa. Most people in this country don't even have £3,000 in savings. I mean, that's the reality. Kevin, appreciate that. I understand the frustration. Kevin's in Leicestershire. Hello, Kevin. What do you want to say?
Hey, Julia. I'll try and make this quick because I know you're always pushed for time.
Oh, yeah, no, because we yap too much. That's when it's your turn. Go for it.
Well, it's a privilege to talk to you. You're my favourite, and I think you're brilliant how you debate with people. I really do. But that's not the point. As regards what as regards what Shabana Mahmood said yesterday, great, sounds great, but why not keep it simple? None of this is really going to make a difference. I think the left and the right know that. I know it's going to be difficult just to stop the benefits because it was Keir that fought for that in the early noughties against the government. Most people know that. But why not just stop the legal fees? Say, all right, come over here. Fine. You know, you want to come here, great. You want to fight your case to see if you want to stay here, fine. But you've got to pay your own legal fees.
Yeah.
I guarantee that on its own would stop everything.
Yeah, because all those heart, sort of bleeding heart, hand-wringing liberal lawyers, actually, if they're not getting paid anything at all, may change their views.
Well, of course it would, yeah. If they're not, because we know, they're the real problem. I know, these lefty lawyers, I don't want to be too critical, but they are really the problem.
Yeah.
Fighting for, with the chicken nuggets case, stuff like that. But, if they're not getting paid, that's it. It just stops the legal fees. No other country gives them legal fees. Stop the legal fees, problem solved.
I'm loving your work there, Kevin. Thank you very much indeed. 10:33 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Mark Littlewood from Popular Conservatives about what he makes of these announcements yesterday and what's going to happen, and indeed where we are on the budget as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. Mark Littlewood's the Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us. Morning to you, Mark.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, we talked the talk over the weekend, did lots of interviews, made the announcements formally in the Commons yesterday, although I haven't seen the actual bill that's going to go through Parliament. Already a lot of criticism of her plans to tackle illegal migration and basically deport people from this country. A lot of it, it sounds quite impressive, we'll have visa bans on countries that won't take people back and fast-tracking deportations and waiting 20 years for permanent settlement and all of that, but we immediately had sort of pushback on, well, you can't, take money or, people's jewellery and watches from them to pay for their accommodation, and you can't deport families. We can't have children being put on planes. And then we got anger from the other side of, why are we paying people $3,000 each to get on planes and they have no right to be here? Where do you stand on all of this?
Well, I think overall the Labour government is being dragged inch by inch, incredibly slowly, to somewhere approaching reality. But my God, they're having to be dragged there. An interesting question is why none of this was in the Labour Party's manifesto last year, right? They seem to have now alighted upon this. They seem to be slowly waking up to the fact that there's a problem. Quite possibly the fact that so many people are voting for reform is sending them an electoral message. But I think inch by inch towards reality, but still a very long way from it. There's no acceptance that we should leave the ECHR altogether, which I think is going to end up, we're going to end up there. We're going to have to do that to really tackle this. So they're still tackling it at the margins. I don't necessarily object to paying people who are here legally, who we may wish to return home, But if you're here illegally and you have no claim to be here, your return to your country
Wait a
of
minute.
origin should be holding
Who are
your
we
own
trying to
state.
deport who's here legally?
Well, if you wanted to, for example, to encourage people who have a right to be here to leave, I think a financial inducement would be reasonable. I'm not saying that is government policy, but if people are here illegally, they shouldn't get a penny. They just need to be removed from the country.
I mean, the argument is like, well, they'll do all these legal challenges, but they'll only do legal challenges if they think they're going to work, or they can keep doing them forever. If you limit, you get one legal challenge and you can do it from abroad, or, various different parties suggested that. As my caller Kevin just said, well, if there's no legal aid, that might dissipate. And certainly other countries, France doesn't offer you legal aid. It's one of the reasons why people come here. But there is an argument like, just put them on the planes. But then, often they're being put on commercial flights, like the one in, one out little exchange scheme with France. They're put on a BA flight. Apparently there are no EasyJet or Ryanair flights to Paris, and they're put on a quarter of the price. They're put on a BA flight, but they stop. You don't want to have people who are kicking off on the plane. The pilots won't take them. But I mean, I'm at the point where we'll just sedate them. I just don't care anymore. I genuinely don't want my money being given to people who've got no right to be here.
Yes, I understand all of that. And I think that Kevin, your caller earlier, was interesting, blaming the lefty lawyers. There's some truth in that. But we wouldn't have the problem with the lefty human rights lawyers if we didn't have the lefty human rights laws. That's the actual problem, right? So you need to start repealing the laws. If it's the law of the land that you've got a million grounds on which you can appeal, including whether your son likes the taste of English chicken nuggets, well, then expect lefty human rights lawyers to flock to their aid.
But again, often this is done under Article 8, the right to privacy in a family life, and I've read out the full thing. There's 2 paragraphs. The lefty lawyers and the judges and tribunals appear to only look at one of those and not the second paragraph, which is there is no question at all you can deport people if they're a threat to national security or to other issues or public safety and even economic costs of them. You're allowed to deport people. It's absurd that we don't need to change the law, really. We need to change the people who are absurdly misinterpreting the law.
Yeah, it's now been interpreted way beyond the intentions of the original draft. I'm told that when it was originally drafted, Article 8 was essentially supposed to mean that the Gestapo can't raid your house. That was essentially what it was referring to. Not that you had all of these unbelievably overprotected rights to a family life. I mean, it's been interpreted beyond reason. The problem, however, of course, Julia, is once those interpretations happen, they become common law precedent, right? So once you've established a case in court that you have a right to X or a right to Y, or we need to consider A, B, or C, that becomes established precedent. So I think we're not just going to have to radically change the interpretation of Article 8. We're probably going to have to annul it in some way. Otherwise, those common law precedents...
Cut those precedents, start again. What do you make of the freebies? The Sun front page today, legal migrants getting free maths tutors. I know that many families that would be desperate after being failed by their local com to get maths tutoring for their kids. I mean, you're looking at 50 quid an hour, frankly, getting access to private GPs, priority access, and they're getting exercise classes. I mean, these are people who are in deportation centres. They're awaiting deportation. I mean, this is... Who does this? Who pays for this? Why is this even happening?
Very good question. I mean, it's beyond madness, isn't it? It's gone completely out of control. We should be providing, while we are processing your case, which, by the way, should take about 18 days rather than 18 months, which I think is about the average to process a case, with the very barest minimum. Look, I don't want to make it unnecessarily unpleasant, but it should be the barest minimum that you're provided with, not exercise classes, not maths tuitions, not PlayStations, not widescreen televisions, the barest minimum, humane conditions, but not much beyond that, frankly. And the maths tuition stuff, extraordinary. On the medical side, well, I can understand for the interests of the rest of us, you might want to check that somebody who's come in hasn't brought an illness or a disease or a virus with them for the protection of the wider population. But if the medical support is for their own benefit, then, they shouldn't be getting anything better than British citizens get on the NHS.
Well, exactly. If it's a 2 months wait to go and get an appointment for this or that, well, then that's what we're having. That's what you get too. It is. I mean, we had the scandal, didn't we, a few months ago about them having a right to go back to a GP or a doctor they'd seen, months ago and have a £300 round-trip taxi. I mean, It's just extraordinary. It really is. In fact, they got the appointments at all. Not a surprise that people are very disappointed in this Prime Minister. He is the least popular Prime Minister, since records began in the 70s. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, also the least popular Chancellor. Nearly half of Labour voters now say they want Keir Starmer to step down. Given that our constitution wouldn't require a change in government, there's no way Labour MPs are going to want to go for an election. I know the Prime Minister could just say, well, if you force me out, I'm going to the King and I'm going to force an election. He could do that under our constitution. But if we did get rid of Keir Starmer, or whether it's after the budget, whether it's, I think as many people are now expecting it still might happen next summer, who would be a better alternative given that Labour MPs and indeed Labour voters, Labour Party members, tend to go for the more left-wing candidate?
Yes, I think for those of us on the right of centre of the spectrum, we should be a bit careful what we wish for here. I believe Ed Miliband is the most popular cabinet minister amongst Labour Party members.
It would be good fun, though. Those 2 weeks before the country imploded would be fun.
We would be back to the banter era. You're absolutely right, Julia. But the damage it might wreak on the British economy would be huge. I suspect that Keir Starmer is dead man walking. It seems to me extremely unlikely, almost wholly implausible that he can turn around his poll ratings from the abysmal numbers they're at. And if we see in the budget, I know they now seem to have retreated on their initial income tax idea, but if we see in the budget anything that breaks the Labour Party's manifesto, clearly and unambiguously, that to my mind, I think will signal to the Labour Party that there's no way that Keir Starmer could lead them into the next election, because any promises made in the next election campaign would be laughed at if those made in the last election campaign were broken. So I would have thought that the Labour Party are likely to conclude sooner rather than later that they need to change Prime Minister. No need for a general election, as you rightly say, Julia. In fact, 6 of our last 10 Prime Ministers came in mid-term. Only 4 out of 10.
We're turning into Germany. There was a point, I think, where they had 50 years where they didn't change a government at any point as a result of an election. It was like coalitions, wasn't it? What do you make of Kemi Badenoch and her announcement in terms of the budget coming up next week, and basically saying they expect the government to scrap the 2-child benefit cap? She said, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back. It is extraordinary. The government has strongly hinted they're going to bring back payments for third, fourth. We don't know whether it's going to be capped at a higher rate or whether it's going to be tapered or what they're going to do. But basically, keep on having kids that you can't afford. An extra £3,500 a year. It's not a couple of quid. £3,500 a year for every extra child if you get rid of that cap and just go back to what it was before. But apparently we've got no money, but we're going to make sure that people who can't afford kids can carry on having kids.
Yeah, I mean, my worry across the board, Julia, is there seems to be absolutely no area of public expenditure where the Labour Party seems to be able to save money. You can make trade-offs, if you want to spend more on one particular area, OK, but then try and find big savings in another area. I can't think of any area of public expenditure where the Labour Party, this Labour government, appears to have any idea whatsoever about how savings could be found. And I'm afraid if the public finances are out of control, and they basically are, you need a government that's willing, overall, in aggregate, to find some very, very substantial savings. And certainly if you want to spend more on something, even more than we're spending at the moment, that needs to be offset by even bigger savings elsewhere. But there is no appetite that I can detect on the Labour backbenchers for any sort of government reductions in spending whatsoever.
Well, indeed. I mean,
Reeves and Starmer are at the mercy of the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Kemi Badenoch, they're talking about slashing £23 billion from the welfare bill. Reformer also want to slash the welfare bill. They say they could fill the £25 billion hole in the budget, but also saying that would include cutting foreign aid down from, I think, £14 billion to just £1 billion, just what they, money they give to the UN and a few other international bodies, and that's it. Would you support that?
Yes, I do support that. I mean, I think that probably rather than us having a foreign aid budget, it would be wise for the government to have some sort of contingency fund that we need to dip into. But the insanity of the foreign aid budget was that we were having to spend it year in, year out, even if there were not worthy causes to spend it on. So there was this rush by officials to spend the money because they had to hit the target of spending what used to be 0.7%. I don't think you need an annual foreign aid budget. I do support certain cases if there is a humanitarian disaster that we should intervene, but we should take that on a case-by-case basis. out of some sort of contingency fund that we build up, rather than having a set amount each year that we're determined to spend.
And if the country you're helping has a president who lives in a palace and has a private jet, maybe they don't get any money at all, going out on a limb. Just finally, I want to ask you, this came up this morning about this plan by governments to announce a crackdown on ticket touts and resale sites that offer tickets for concerts and everything else at several times their face value. Of course, we had this big outcry over Oasis tickets in autumn last year. I mean, we were sitting there as the price surged. I think we were offered, finally, after 6 hours, got to, I think, over 350 quid for tickets. I mean, I don't even think we were in Wembley anymore. I think we were actually in Cardiff. We were so far away, and I went, I've seen Oasis live, with all due respect, as good as they are, they ain't worth that much money for tickets that bad, and we decided not to get them. But the big issue often is that people try and buy tickets, they can't get tickets at all. Now they were surging the price of the ticket within their own ticket sales, but we've seen tickets go on sale for £3,000 that had a market price of £200 when they were first sold. We've got a lot of ticket agencies, we've got bots buying them en masse to then deliberately sell them off. Should there be a ban on reselling concert tickets for profit? That's what the government proposes.
No, I don't think the government needs to get involved here. I do think that bands like Oasis or other popular pop stars and groups probably need to think through the implications of their own PR if they find out all of their tickets are bought by bots. But at some point, the market will find its own price, Julia. All right, £350 to go to an Oasis concert isn't worth it for you, say. But there's probably somebody out there who it is worth.
People were paying £3,500 for the same tickets a few months later.
There you go. There you go. I mean, I quite like what Kate Bush did. She had a kind of loyalty scheme that if you had been signed up to her newsletter for at least a year, you got first dibs, rather than it just being everything hits the market at the same time. So I think it's likely that the bands themselves, for fear of the public relations backlash, should find those sort of schemes. But it's no business of the government what a pop band want to charge for a ticket to listen and play music at Wembley Stadium.
Very interesting. Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. Thank you for that. Benjamin Butterworth, where are you on the ticket taxing? Because it sounds like a good idea. People think that's a good idea, but then we all got a better chance of getting the tickets on the first round, and the profit doesn't go to the ticket tout agencies, the Viagogos and others, even though they're providing a service. But if you're not willing to pay £3,000 for bog standard tickets, it's not like you're getting VIP passes backstage or a dinner beforehand for that. Then people don't have to pay it. But there's an argument that actually it'll just move on to the black market.
I think for £3,000 I'd want to marry a Gallagher, right, at that price.
I want a lot more than that,
But, I mean, look, ticket touts are exploiting the system. It's not a part of the market economy, because what they're doing is buying up a load of tickets and then exploiting the supply and demand to then force people to pay crazy prices for it. So whose interest is that in? Well, not the consumer, because we're paying more, and not the industry, because the money isn't actually going to the... They're not getting any more money. If they want to sell a ticket for £3,000 and someone's going to pay it, that's fair enough. But I don't understand why the middleman gets to do it. Exactly.
You've got to stop the bots buying them.
Exactly. But also, of course, this plays into surge pricing, which was the big outrage at Oasis, because if you've got a few people buying up loads of tickets, then that is going to distort the price.
When you get on the website and you think the tickets are this price and then it goes up, but there was a big backlash to that. They were nothing to do with us, Gov. They probably didn't know anything about it, but they were certainly making the money from it. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. 10:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking about the latest woke nonsense. Scientists, I kid you not, saying that parents should ask their babies' consent before they change their nappies. I'm not joking. They've actually written a paper on that. That's up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about the latest woke madness with Emma Trimble. She's a fellow at the New Culture Forum. Very good morning to you, Emma.
Good to be with you, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining. I want to talk first of all about this. I saw this yesterday and went, oh, for goodness sake. These are two scientists, Dr. Nicole Downs and Dr. Catherine Bussey. They're lecturers in early childhood at Deakin University in Australia. And they have argued that parents should get their children, their babies' permission before they change their nappy, as this is an opportunity to teach babies about consent. I mean, have these people got kids? Do they? You can't get a 3-week-old to give you consent to have their nappy changed. What on earth are they talking about?
Yeah, I'm sure charitably it's all well-meaning, but my concern here is actually that this could potentially actually be harmful because, yes, I think we can all agree it's important to teach children about consent, to make sure that they're safe from people who might prey on them, of course, to do that in an age-appropriate way. But the reality is, with a small child, they cannot consent. And so if you're teaching them that they can consent, that's a very dangerous thing.
What do you mean?
All of this in the context of the trans, well, I mean, in the sense that we've seen in the context of the trans debate that there are some people who think that children can consent, for example, to puberty blockers and things like that. Yeah. There are some people who have a very malign ideology who think children can consent to other things as well.
Well, no, let's spell it out. There is a whole movement of paedophiles, let's call them what they are, who think that, children can consent to sex with adults.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that that is not, what the people in this study are agreeing with.
But it's starting going down a road. But again, it's this idea. This idea always that children somehow should be treated as if almost they're adults, as opposed to, but need protection, as opposed to they are the child of the parent, and the parent is going to, I mean, of course you want to make nappy changing a fun experience. It doesn't have to be kids screaming. You just play a game. You could do something. But I mean, certainly any parent I know has talked to their child about, it's very important. That those are your private parts, and no one can touch you without your permission. And the doctor has to ask permission for an examination and things like that. And mum's in the room. I mean, there's a difference between that, isn't there? And talking about babies, I mean, nappies by definition should only be on children who are in no position to understand any concept such as this.
Absolutely, and I really think, I mean, it's obviously silly, but I really think, like one of the things mentioned in the study was that you shouldn't distract your child when you're changing their nappy by giving them a rattle or something, or something to entertain them, and instead you should try to give them a sense of agency to ask
these people are insane.
Whether or not they and it is insane, and I think actually what it is a confusion of the role of the parent, of the proper relationship between a parent and child. It should be about trust. You shouldn't be teaching a small child or inadvertently teaching a small child that if they give their consent, then an adult can touch them. That is the wrong message to send.
It's weird. They've got it completely the wrong way. But again, I'd love to meet these people's kids. I'm telling you right now, they have tantrums in supermarkets and they walk on the table. I'm telling you that right now. I've met these people. I know these kinds of people, and their kids are all absolutely ghastly. I'm I'm a 1950s mum, and I like my kid. Let's also talk about Graham Linehan. He's back in the news in yet another row. Now we know, look, he lost his marriage, he lost his entire career as a top comedy writer. He lost an awful lot of, well, inverted commas, friends in the industry, as did J.K. Rowling, by speaking out on the trans right. I'm still intensely grateful to him as a woman that he did actually put his career on the line and didn't just go, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that like everyone else did. But he's now fallen out with a former Father Ted star. This is Ardal O'Hanlon, of course, starred as Father Dougal in the sitcom of Father Ted. And he's basically the latest ex-colleague, he says, according to Graham, the latest ex-colleague to smear me in the press. And he said O'Hanlon is baffled by his, what Linehan called his confrontational style. Now, there's no doubt at all, Graham Linehan is confrontational, more confrontational than a lot of, for instance, the women on social media over this issue. But I kind of like his confrontational style. I think we needed a bit of that.
Yeah, thank God that he is confrontational. Graham Linehan is a hero. He's done so much for women's rights and for protecting same-sex spaces. I honestly can't believe that no paper has run the headline, "I hear you're a sexist now, Father." This guy is so late to the game as well in trying to throw Graham Linehan under the bus.
Too late.
At a point when you know, we've already seen that the case against him was thrown out, that he has become, yes, he's on the other side of cancellation. Yes, a lot of people, his friends, his family, whatever, have denounced him. But he's come out on the other side as a legend. So, you know, I think actually it's a positive sign that I think many people will look on this actor coming out and denouncing him in this way.
Well, he didn't denounce him. I mean, he's in an interview with the Sunday Times, and Hanlon has said, "I still got on great with everyone, though I haven't seen much of the show's creator, Graham Linehan, and I'm baffled as to why he got involved in the culture wars. I feel sorry for him. He's entitled to his opinions, but the way he presented them made it confrontational." That's not really smearing him. That's, you know, that's a reasonable opinion for him to hold. But it's fascinating. He's baffled as to why he got involved in the, you know, culture wars. You know, I mean, it's like, well, why did he get involved in protecting women from having men walking into their toilets and their changing rooms? Well, because it was the right thing to do, Ardal.
Yeah, someone lives in a bubble, clearly. If he can't understand, I think that's exactly the point. If anything, that makes the case that actually Graham was right to be so confrontational, because it needs to be hammered into the heads of people like him.
Yeah, absolutely. Emma Trimble, thank you very much for the New Culture Forum. Benjamin Butterworth, I think you've had your own run-ins with Graham Linehan, but like, not really quite sure why.
Yeah, he's very confrontational, that's for sure. He had posted on a Friday night that I'd removed pronouns from my Twitter bio, except that they were never there in the first place.
I mean, we're all surprised by that.
They were never there.
My pronouns are me in my Twitter bio.
Yeah, mine are pay me. Anyway, this thing got hundreds of thousands of views and thousands of tweets, and eventually I had to say it's completely made up. Please, go put Twitter down, go outside and have some real friends and some real fun.
There is that. That said, I still think he's a hero. But, you know, sometimes people should be confrontational about really key things like women's and girls' safety. Funny that, but there we are. Loads more to talk about. We're going to probably have some confrontation between Benjamin Butterworth and myself coming up. Lots more top guests, including the Ashok Kumar telling me why we should be paying slavery reparations. We're also going to be talking to Lord Maurice Glassman, the Labour peer. This is Talk, I hope, with Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, whether you are listening on smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much indeed for joining us. There's so much to talk about. Lots more coming up before 1 o'clock. Lots of top guests. And don't forget, you can go to my YouTube page at any time, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and her hitting back at her critics of her asylum reforms. She's getting quite a lot of support from Reform and the Tories, but that may not go down well with Labour backbenchers. Certainly didn't go down well with the Greens and the Lib Dems, you know, the usual suspects. She was accused of stoking division as she unveiled her policy. But of course, she basically said that actually she was the one who had the experience of being called, I will paraphrase, an effing P word because of racism that had been stoked up. But it is interesting that Zia Yusuf from the Reform Party made the point that she's kind of saying it's because of racism against her and other people of colour in this country that she has to deal with asylum. Whereas, well, it's not because of racism, it's because it's the right thing to do, isn't it? We'll talk about that. Also going to be talking more about this, the absurd situation of paying people who've got no right to be here to leave the country. We're looking at £3,000 being the maximum sum offered per person, even to families who are going to be deported. And the Home Office is also going to trial increased cash incentives to get people to leave the country, including foreign offenders. Meanwhile, of course, we're seeing free maths tutors, free exercise classes, and goodness knows what else being given to people who've been earmarked for deportation. You try getting a free maths tutor if you've got your kid at a comp and the maths teacher's useless or on maternity leave or off sick. Good luck with that, folks. Plus, we're going to be talking in this hour about the Caribbean nations who are meeting UK officials and Labour MPs this week to demand slavery reparations worth up to £18 trillion. That's just from the UK. Hey, guys. When the Romans and the Danes, on behalf of the Vikings, pay up for us, for what they did to us, then we'll start thinking about it. Until then, it's a big fat no. We'll have a debate about that in this hour. You probably want to stay tuned for that. Plus, we are going to be talking about the Gaza peace plan. The UN Security Council has approved Donald Trump's 20-point plan, authorising the deployment of international troops. That's the second phase of the 20-point plan. However, Hamas have basically formally rejected it and will not demilitarise or disarm. So good luck, everybody. All that coming up, so much more besides. I'd love to hear from you on any of the topics we're talking about, but in particular I want to hear from you about Shabana Mahmood's plans to deport failed asylum seekers. Will they succeed? Is it okay to pay £3,000 to people, or I don't know, provide maths tutors to their kids, English language lessons, you know the rest, to people who are earmarked for deportation? I'm not quite sure why we're doing that. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call and tell us what you think and tell us why. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say that journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth is still joining me here in the studio. A very good morning once again to you.
Good morning. Glad someone's delighted I'm here.
You do get quite a lot of hate from our audience when you're on. I mean, he's a nice guy. I mean, he's wrong about some things, but aren't we all? I mean, I'm not, obs. But Benjamin, we had something of a heated debate.
We did.
We did have a heated debate a little bit earlier about Shabana Mahmood and you know how many how many asylum seekers we should take in this country, and I think the British public are getting to zero, and we really are there, and that will be the liberal, lefty, wishy-washy, bleeding heart, hand-wringing types like you that have pushed us to that position, because you guys wouldn't fail to ever put a number on it. Tory wishy-washy lot failed to put a number on it. People are done. They really think that actually times are pretty hard. We like to look after ourselves. They've seen the economic cost of these people, both legal and illegal, actually, overall. They have seen the damage to our culture, damage to law and order, the threat to young women and girls. They have seen the massive change to our high streets, to local areas, change to our politics. You know, the Gaza MPs who are now trying to influence Labour Party government policy when it comes to foreign affairs. They have seen the impact. They don't like it. They don't want any more of it, and they're done. I mean, Isn't this just common sense?
I mean, I think there's been a massive shift, not just in where the centre ground is, but also in where the Labour Party sees this. Shabana Mahmood, as Home Secretary, announced these big reforms yesterday, and there were 18 MPs, Labour MPs, who came out against them. So that's people like Nadia Whittome, who's on the left of the party,
suspects.
or Stella Creasy, who some people will know.
If Stella Creasy is against something, I'm for it. It's just that simple.
Do you know, someone senior in Downing Street recently described Stella Creasy as the most irrelevant Labour MP. She is a faction of one. She's not on the left of the party.
Stella Creasy represents Stella Creasy.
I think that's a fair description. That's certainly what people inside the Labour Party say.
I don't think she likes me.
Really?
I'm going out on a limb here.
Well, at least, she's that's a bigger faction, but but I've been texting around Labour MPs this morning to ask, are people angry? Is there going to be a revolt on this? And actually, it sounds like Labour MPs are actually quite relieved. This is the issue that they're constantly harangued about on the doorstep. It is the issue that makes them most concerned they won't win their constituencies at a next election. And so I don't think
certainly
there'll be
the red wall.
Yeah, for sure. But I think there are more than 400 MPs. Loads of them are in.
But there is that issue that you've got a load of who the biggest threat to them is from the Lib Dems and the Greens and the sort of the leafy southern constituencies, and they are getting very, very worried that they're going to face threats there. And of course they're all hand-wringing and bleeding hearters and no borders, everyone welcome in people. I mean,
I don't think there'll be a revolt on this. I think Labour will get it through. The question is probably
there will be some revolt.
There'll be some revolt, but not a meaningful one. And also the question really will be about how it fits with the law. So whether some of these things can be enforced in reality, things like changing the right to family life under ECHR. But I would point...
No, I don't think you do need to change the law. You just need to enforce the second paragraph of Article 8, which basically says you have every right to do this.
Well, I mean, I would disagree with people like Kemi Badenoch seems to say this, Nigel Farage, that you have to leave the ECHR because this plan that the government's putting forward is based on Denmark, which is in the ECHR. Not only that, this plan was put in under a Labour government in Denmark. And so, there is actually a left-wing precedent for following this example.
But we're discussing this on the show, and everyone's saying follow the Danish thing. OK, it's a much smaller country. They've not been dealing with quite the same crisis, but they've basically shipped people off to other EU countries, a different thing they can do. But also, crucially, they've got the fact that you have to speak Danish through good kind of standard of Danish. Well,
which is hard.
That's hard, yeah. But whereas English is the lingua franca of the world, for want of a better expression, and lots of people will speak it, so you just don't have the same issue there. Shabana Mahmood, I mean, she got in trouble with the Deputy Speaker, Caroline Dix, yesterday because she used some very unparliamentary language about the abuse she's got. But let's just play a quick excerpt. Don't worry, we're not actually playing. We have to beep out the words that she used about. But you'll know the language she used. Called herself, said she'd been called the effing P word, and this is talking about people, a Lib Dem. White Lib Dem MP was saying, no, you're stoking division. And this is what Shabana Mahmood had to say.
Unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see, and that it is all, in fact, just extremist right-wing talking points. But this system is broken, and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is.
I mean, again, look, this on Parliament, you're not even allowed to call someone a liar in Parliament. So I'm not allowed to, certainly not allowed to say the F word and the P word. I mean, certainly not on air. We're not allowed to either. But I mean, and quite rightly, I think. But it is. I mean, it is interesting that her argument that, well, because of racism and because mass uncontrolled immigration has stoked racism, and I'm the victim of it, and other people of colour are the victim of it, and therefore we need to do something about it. But that's not the reason. There are millions of people who are concerned about mass uncontrolled immigration, including myself, I'm not remotely racist. I don't have racist. I'm sorry, I don't have a racist bone in my body, and it's nothing to do with the colour of anyone's skin. It is simply to do with whether or not people are making a contribution, and whether it's our job to take in all the the wastrels and strays from the rest of the world. And I don't think it is.
I mean, I think she's making a powerful point that she doesn't need to be lectured by a white Liberal Democrat man on what division looks like. She knows that because she's the child of immigrants.
I'm not very keen on debates where it's like, well, you haven't got, it's like Owen Jones saying to me, you're not a gay man, so you can't comment on something to do with gay people, which she said to me before, or people say because I'm black and therefore you don't have a comment because you're white on something else. I don't think that people's immutable characteristics are the reason why you're allowed to have something to say. Do you have something useful to say on a topic because you know about it and you have a valid opinion? That's why you can or can't talk about something, not because of what happens to be your skin pigmentation or your sexuality or whether you're man or a woman.
But in the case of what racist anger and vengeance looks like, she knows about that from personal and family experience. And I suppose she's also saying that, people who are racists, that obviously exist, will exploit this kind of division and anger to have an excuse to be more racist, to be more vocal. And who is it that sees the consequences of that? Well, it's people that look like Shabana Mahmood. And of course, here's the thing.
By the way, does she pronounce her name like that?
I've always heard it as Mahmood. I think.
No, I'm intrigued.
I'm pretty sure it's Mahmood.
Okay, whether I'm mispronouncing it or you're mispronouncing it.
We'll soon find out. But I think that also, she's saying that we need a consensus on asylum. Otherwise, there will be what you describe of people wanting no asylum seekers. That's certainly not something that people on the left would want. And also, it's, she is an example of the integration she's talking about. The child of immigrants who have... Legal migrants who has integrated into society, clearly been very productive, very successful.
She went to a good grammar school. Labour are opposed to grammar schools. It's amazing how many of them went to good schools they're opposed to now.
And I think Shabana Mahmood is a great example of integration. And so she's a natural spearhead for this kind of argument. Whereas, someone like Carla Denyer, the co-leader of the Green Party, he was furious at the Home Secretary.
Very angry.
She said there's no such thing as illegals.
I know, they don't believe in borders.
Except
they don't believe in borders.
In one of the 4 Green Party constituencies, they refused to they complained about housing immigrants, refugees in a centre there. So you can't have it both ways.
Well, they all know. The left always wants it both ways. That's why it's incoherent. Fascinating stats that were out this morning from the Office for National Statistics. They had previously estimated that the number of Britons who left Britain in the year of 2024 was 77,000 people who just not went on holiday. I mean, that's 77,000 is just me going in and out of the country. But actually left the country. That's it. I'm done. I'm moving abroad for work, for retirement or whatever it is. They've now realised they've got it wrong. I'm not sure why we even bother having any official stats anymore, because all they do is revise them and say they've got it wrong. They got it so wrong. It wasn't 77,000 Britons who left. It was 257,000. That's not like, it was 87,000. It was 257,000 people who left. Now, here's the thing. There'll be retirees going, I'm done. I'm just going to go and sit in the south of France or in Spain, have a nice life, or whatever. People going off to New Zealand, to Australia for a new life. I know an awful lot of young people who are actually moving to countries like Greece, to Cyprus, to Italy, to Portugal, where they are offering great deals on, you don't have to pay income tax for a year, and then you get a lower rate, but they want to encourage young people to go. Now, this is the thing, and that was always the argument about immigration to this country. There's an argument for taking, top students, the economically, people who are going, right, I've got these amazing skills, I want to come to your country, the brightest and the best, people who are going to movers and shakers. My worry is, we've probably lost a few thousand influencers, those women with the big lips,
digital
and the weird,
nomads.
And the sort of the weird eyelash, the crazy weird cartoonish ladies. We've probably lost a bunch of them to Dubai. I can live with that. Bye-bye. Thanks for, the average IQ of the country's gone up massively. But I don't care about it. But we will also have lost a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of really hardworking people, a lot of people, especially in the tech industries, where, as you say, they can literally work on a beach in Greece and actually get their job done. They're not on the payroll from the local council pretending to take calls. They actually are doing a job where they're getting money, they're wheeling and dealing. we're losing those people. We're losing their entrepreneur skills. We're losing their tax. We're losing their influence on our local societies. We're losing their kids, who are going to be more likely to be get up and go kids as well. This is an absolute disaster for our country.
I mean, you know, the ability to go to other countries, especially if you have a digital job, which is obviously relatively normal these days. You know, countries like Thailand.
I'm going to start doing my show from the Maldives.
I think you're there enough, aren't you? So maybe. But, you know, you have countries like Thailand, there are Caribbean countries where you can basically just walk in and get a work visa for a digital operation because they desperately want those relatively high-value workers. But
you spend money in the local economy.
But, you know, we can't compete with the sort of, what is it, like 5% income tax or something they have in the UAE and in Dubai.
No.
We can't compete with that. And the world has fundamentally changed. The ability to migrate, we see it in good and bad ways, has never been easier, and it's not getting harder.
But there's a very big difference between someone paying 5% or nothing in Dubai, and someone basically, you know, paying, you know, effectively on some incomes pretty much over half of their income in tax, and going, what's the sodding point?
I mean, I think some people don't realise, for young workers who've been to university, the effective tax rate they're paying on an income of like 35 grand is over 50%.
Yeah.
You know, my student loan repayments are £600 a month.
A month?
Now, obviously, it's relative to my income, but just compare that to a middle-aged person.
And by the way,
that's probably
you're not
their
paying
mortgage.
back the loan, you're just paying the interest.
Indeed. I actually went and looked at how much I paid off, thinking I must have nearly done it. I was on the same as I was when I graduated because of the interest rate, which is insane.
It is completely wrong.
You know, we have so many taxes and deductions in this country but it's not as straightforward as just income tax.
I can see why young people feel that way. What do you think about these budget plans? We've got the budget next Wednesday. Everyone thinks it's going to be an absolute disaster. We presume we had that concern about a challenge to challenge to Keir's, don't careful what you wish for, a challenge to Keir Starmer from Wes Streeting or others in the aftermath of the budget, because as one of my guests pointed out, what did Downing Street know about how bad it's going to be? And of course, we've now got Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, the Tory leader. She's been on air since 10 o'clock this morning, basically giving a joint press conference with Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, about what they were doing. Massive big cuts to the welfare budget. They want to make £47 billion worth of savings, including 23 billion from the welfare bill, saying if Labour get rid of the plan to have the two-child benefit gap, they're going to bring it back in. I mean, I 100% support her on that. But also, we've got the Reform leader, Anzia Youssef, his policy chief, been announcing what they want to do, massive welfare reforms, but also cutting foreign aid to £1 billion. There is now almost, you know, the Overton window has moved, you know. There is now a race on the right to move towards benefit cuts, and a lot of that is because, let's face it, these people are not voting for parties that want to cut their benefits. They're on the Labour payroll, this lot, such as they do vote. But also, there are so many people, the workers, the strivers, people who are trying to get on in life, and even people who are on minimum wage but doing the right thing, who are just saying, I cannot be taxed anymore, while him next door does sod all day and watches daytime telly. Hi, if you're watching.
But I think all the parties are being dishonest on this question of cutting welfare, because the cost of pensions is £166 billion a year.
What do you want to do? Kill off the pensioners?
No, but why should they get above inflation rises every year?
Because they've got the lowest pretty much the lowest pension in Western Europe.
But that's not true, because it's when you combine state pension with employee pensions, it doesn't work out as the lowest at all.
Employee pensions.
But the idea that we should be increasing it beyond inflation, 4.8%, an extra £5 billion on the pension bill. Now, I don't think they should get a cut in their pension. Of course I don't. But why should they be getting more than inflation when nobody else is? That is a massive part of the bill.
And this was the triple lock on pensions. I don't think the triple lock survives the next general election. I think the reality check.
But no party is being honest about that.
No.
And that
because you know why?
is a bigger chunk than anything else.
Because older people vote.
They do.
That's why no one cares about people who are 20. You can say what you want. You're 18 or 20. If your cohort doesn't actually turn out to vote, no one cares. You have to vote for people to care what you think. That's why they do what the older people want. But not these people who say, I've paid in for years now. The fact is that most people have not paid in any lump sum at all that would even cover their pension. The idea that you can work for 40 years and then be retired 30 years is delusional. It's utterly delusional. Look, my age, we're going to see retirement rates going up for state pension. Your age group, good luck.
I'll still be paying my student loan off.
out of your pension when you get it at 80.
Yeah.
No, but this is the thing. A lot of it is unsustainable. There's a lot of very sensible people, a lot of people who really understand the numbers work, who are saying we are headed for a very big fall. Our numbers are unsustainable. So are France's, so are Germany's. It's all heading to madness, and no politicians are really being, even Nigel Farage, who's a straight talking as they come on this stuff, is really being honest and saying, guys, we are living way beyond our means. I mean, I was someone who during furlough went, I really support furlough. If we're going to have lockdown, then I obviously didn't want us to have more lockdowns, so there wouldn't be more furlough. But even I was saying really early on, and said to Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor, your Father Christmas right now, you're going to be the, Scrooge in a few months' time. Did people think we weren't going to have to pay the money back, guys?
I mean, to put this in context, when the pension was brought about, the average life expectancy was 50. Today, a third of people born today will live to see their 100th birthday. And so that is a fundamental change. It's a miracle. It's a fantastic success of human ingenuity that we live that long. But it means you can't have these pensions for half your life. You can't have the same amounts paying in to get that amount out.
Okay.
And so, we have to change it.
But here's the thing. I mean, as much as I'm concerned about that, and with an ageing population, you say, well, an ageing population, what we need more young people to have kids, but they can't have kids if they've got loads of debts, they can't buy a home.
Well, we need immigrants, don't we? We need immigrants. Then you change the demographics.
No, do you know what? Immigrants also get old.
Yeah, but
mind-blowing idea. They also age. They're not immune to ageing.
But the projections for the UK economy into the middle of this century put us as doing much better than most European countries
because we've had an immigrant population.
Because we'll have a better proportion of workers.
If an awful lot of those immigrant workers who we brought in are earning and contributing themselves more than they are costing the state, and that their kids will also do so. Statistically, the mass immigration we have had, particularly from the Indian subcontinent, that's not the case.
Well, I think particularly, hang on, Indians are the richest demographic in Britain.
Subcontinent. So when you're looking at Pakistan and Bangladesh in particular, very high rates of unemployment. Actually, the Indian rate of unemployment, Indian migrant, is actually higher than indigenous white Brits in this country. Interestingly, it's been a much more successful cohort of people who've emigrated to this country. So there are lots of different things, and each individual will be completely different. Who's someone who's come from any country who's turned out to be brilliant. You could have a Canadian who's been no use whatsoever, who's been on the dole the whole time. I mean, I'm not saying each individual.
My family did come from Canada.
Each individual represents everything. I'm half Irish immigrant. History. I mean, it's different for every person, but we need to be a lot more choosy about who we take in. But actually, what we really want is more people in this country to be able to have babies. We want people to be able to settle down, buy a home, have children themselves.
That's why you should lift the 2-child benefit cap so that people can have an easier route to afford their kids. Because we desperately need people to have more kids.
People should get jobs so they can afford the kids. Why would just like people to be able to have 2 kids?
Enough. The housing is so expensive.
The 2-child benefit cap is largely paid to people who don't work.
You can hardly house yourself.
You want unemployed people. You want unemployed people to have 3 or 4 children.
No.
They can't afford the first 2 they've got, and then they're on universal credit. They don't work enough to support their own kids, and you want us to go, let's tax someone else who is working really hard and can't afford to have another kid themselves. You want to tax them more to pay for Mr. and Mrs. Unemployed to have another kid they still can't afford.
Look,
Are you kidding me?
No.
And you think their kid is likely to be a top entrepreneur, changing the world, curing cancer? No, statistically, their kid is likely to also be on the dole.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want them to have more kids.
I'm the kid of 2 criminals from a council estate,
and you are the one who bucked the trend.
And turned out fine. The idea that the child is responsible for the parent's situation is completely wrong.
No, the parents are responsible for the child's situation. If you've got 2 kids and you're still on universal credit, you can't afford to support your kids, and mum isn't working, and dad's working 2 days a week, if that, and you can't support your kids, you should not have a 3rd kid. And the only person responsible for your 3rd child not living a great life is you.
Society is responsible that no child lives in poverty, regardless of who their parents are.
That's the choice of the parents.
And
well, then we'll take that child into care then, shall we?
Most people don't plan on having 3 or 4 or 5 children. It's just what happens.
Contraception is free in this country.
But I'm afraid people
millions and
people
millions
get excited, Julia.
Millions of couples don't have another child. They go don't have a first child or a second child or a third child because they can't afford to have them.
And they should be able to afford it, and they should be helped by this.
And they can't, partly because we're paying massive benefits and paying massive taxes to fund people who aren't making a contribution, who do sod all day, who can't look after their own kids, can't be bothered to get off their own backsides to look after their own kids, and expecting other people to pay for them. And we're done. No more.
But if you don't let those kids have a fair access to
it's not me not letting them.
to education and to quality of life.
Free education, free contraception, free school meals. How much more do they want?
Well, they should get everything because they're children.
Let's put them in a palace.
And if you don't give those children a good quality of life, then they will turn into people that don't get an education and are unemployed and aren't productive members of society.
No, we're encouraging the reckless
I think
parents
it is
to have
wrong.
more children. They can't afford.
But hang on, you're saying that many of these people that have 3 or 4 kids are unemployed. Well, that's the case when
They're
don't
on universal credit, which is a benefit for people who are also working. But the vast majority of them are not working. That's the case when they don't get child benefit. And so that doesn't make your argument make sense. What?
The fact is, if they're having those kids right now, the difference would be that those kids have a better quality of life if you extend the benefit.
I'm sorry, they would have a better quality of life if mum and dad went out to work.
Yes, of course they would.
Well, then why is it my responsibility to pay more tax to pay for the parents to stay at home?
But you can
when the parents can solve the situation themselves.
You can create other situations.
Why am I paying for someone to be on Ozempic on the NHS when they can pay for it themselves by having fewer takeaways?
Look, as a taxpayer, I want my money to say that there aren't 10-year-olds in this country living in poverty and not being fed and clothed appropriately.
Yes, so let's not pay parents. Are you under? This is the thing. Stop. Everyone on the left is under this illusion that people, at the bottom of society, don't make the same rational choices as everyone else. Which is, I don't get a new home, I don't get a bigger council flat, and I don't get more money in my pocket by having another kid. So they don't have another kid. That's literally the decision that people make.
Clearly, the cost of a child is more than the benefits you get for it. It's a very expensive decision to make.
It very much depends on your parenting. And I can assure you.
Your argument has to accept that you think it is okay, you think it is morally justified in a society as rich as ours that there should be kids that aren't being fed and clothed and educated appropriately. I don't think that is
They go to state schools, they can be educated. There is nobody in this country who can't afford to feed and clothe their child.
Of course there is.
That's rubbish. There are feckless parents who choose to spend it on heroin and alcohol, but that's not them not being able to afford it.
Unemployment benefit of, what is it, something like 70 quid a week can afford all those things? That's ridiculous.
They don't get that if they... I'm sorry, that's not what they get if they've got kids. What with the free housing and all the extra benefits and the child benefit, $3.5 grand a year per child. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I mean, look, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree.
One of my best friends works on the benefits office on the counter with the glass screen. She knows it. I can assure you, as she's very clear, there ain't anybody who can't afford to clothe and feed their children. End of. Nothing to discuss. They're choosing not to. 11:29. We're rather over time. Funnily enough, I want to squeeze in at least one call before we go to our next guest. This is Talk. We're the home of common sense and quite heated arguments. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 11:32 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Let's go to your phone call. So 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Let's go to Linda, who is in Dorset. Linda, what do you want to say?
Hi. Yeah, I'm originally from Yorkshire. I've been in Dorset for 35 years, but I'd quite like £3,000 to relocate back to a log cabin in the wilds of Yorkshire, away from all this bloody madness.
I mean, again, what? £3,000 is a huge sum of money. Yeah, it is. It is definitely a huge sum of money. Is it worth it? It's like when we paid, the Epping, sexual assault. When we, £500. And I understand the going rate then was £2,000. Don't make a fuss. Don't do another legal challenge. Don't fight. When you got the handcuffs on, just go on the plane quietly. Is it worth that? But then, if they all know that that's what they need to do, then we're going to end up paying all of them. Exactly. And then you wonder why the kids won't go to work. Why should they work and pay taxes to give to other people? Yeah, I mean, that's how people... That is how people feel, isn't it? Did you hear on my little debate with Benjamin Butterworth there about the two-child benefit cap, that £3,500 that people get for their third, fourth, fifth kids or not? He hasn't got a clue what some of those parents do with that money. They're down the bloody nail bars, they're having their eyelashes dyed, they're having their nails done. Yeah, I'm always amazed. I love it. I love it with the BBC and ITV and Sky, hilarious. Whenever they do a food bank and they've got some woman, I always point out she's got arms the size of my thighs. Basically going, I've had to miss a meal. They've got dyed hair. They've got, as you say, they've got the nails done. You think that's £25 just on your nails, love. And she's standing in the queue waiting, smoking a cigarette. There you go. You think, well, if you can afford that, let's feed the kids. Yeah, absolutely. Linda, I think you and I might be living in the real world. But there we are. I'm getting smirks from Benjamin there. Linda, thank you for that. I'm going to talk about slavery reparations up next. Just before we go to a break, because we did go rather long, before we get to our guest, Ashok Kumar, in a couple of moments, just want to ask Benjamin Butterworth, we've got a delegation of people arriving from Caribbean nations, CARICOM. They're meeting UK officials and Labour MPs this week to demand slavery reparations. They want $33 trillion worth of reparations from Europe generally, and apologies and writing off debt and you name it. £18 trillion, I think, they're asking from Britain. Should we pay anything?
No, it's obviously not possible.
See, he's sensible on some things.
And I think it's only something like 10 years ago that we finished paying off the cost of ending slavery.
Well, apparently that's rubbish, and apparently that was just an accountancy thing, and it was done years and years ago.
Oh. Well, still, it cost a lot of money. Although we did
it was
pay,
our money.
Although the argument would be we paid the slave owners, not the people who were obviously institutionally detrimented by slavery. And so I don't doubt that it damaged those countries' ability to develop, but we don't have £33 trillion, so it's not going to happen, is it?
I wouldn't put it past Lord Hermer and Keir Starmer, but there we are. Coming up next, we are going to talk to Associate Professor at Birkbeck University, Ashok Kumar, who thinks that absolutely we should compensate those Caribbean countries for slavery. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This
Very good morning. Welcome back. 11:37 is the time. Let's talk slavery reparations, because Caribbean nations represented by CARICOM are going to be meeting with Labour MPs and officials this week to demand slavery reparations. It's all part of basically a long-term plan, really, by 15 Caribbean nations to get compensation for the horrors of slavery from former colonial powers. They're asking from France, from Spain, from others. The biggest sum, though, is from the UK. Now, Keir Starmer has said we're not going to be paying reparations, but, well, who knows on U-turns with our Prime Minister. Let's talk to Dr. Ashok Kumar. He's an associate professor at Birkbeck University and joins us now. Good morning to you, Ashok.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us. Is there a case for us to be paying reparations all these years on to countries and to people who themselves individually were never enslaved?
Well, it's not just slavery, it's also colonialism. So, of course, colonialism occurred in the Caribbean into the 60s, into the 80s for some nations, British colonialism in the Caribbean. And so we're beneficiaries of the slave economy. Of course, we continue to pay loss of property from 1833 into 2015. I know you say that that's just a technicality. No, it wasn't. We continued to pay those debts off until 2015, to the slave owners. And also, reparations is not something that's exceptional. I mean, we, of course, paid reparations. The British state did to the Mau Mau. I'm sure you don't think that was a problem. I think, of course, the Americans paid. Do you think that was a problem? I mean, the Americans paid reparations to the Japanese for internment.
I think paying reparations to people who are still alive who've been impacted is very, very different.
Yeah, but people paid to the heirs as well. Like, I mean, the Germans paid reparations to the victims of the Holocaust and to their heirs. Do you think that's acceptable?
I think to the immediate, I think to the children. And again, you've got to remember.
What about the children? What about the children's children?
Well, we're not talking about the children's children. We're talking about eight plus generations on. And I suppose the argument...
It's not 8 generations on, but yeah, it's
for most countries. But you're saying about the victims of colonialism. I mean, it often depends which country colonised you, doesn't it? But one of the main arguments that people, and I would certainly subscribe to this argument, is that, you know, it was an absolute abomination. The awful sad truth is that every empire, every civilization in the whole of history of humankind has carried out slavery. It's been done across the world, every different kind of people throughout the centuries. We are the one country, the one empire that ended it at great cost to our nation. And although that doesn't make it okay, we're done. It's over. We fought to stop it. And actually, it doesn't serve any purpose to be paying back reparations. I mean, unless the Romans pay us reparations, or I don't know, the Danes on behalf of the Vikings, or every single other state, it doesn't really make sense to go over, let's face it, what is old territory. When you talk about slavery, you're talking hundreds of years, many generations past. And frankly, why should only one group of countries pay reparations for one group of victims of slavery? Why not everyone else through the history of time?
Well, I mean, if you look at the slave-owning countries, the colonizing countries, which are the same ones, the chattel slave, the transatlantic slave nations, those countries ended up becoming the wealthiest countries in the world. And the countries that were enslaved and the countries that were colonized became the poorest countries in the world. I mean, look, I'll just give you an example.
But you're saying there's a direct causation there?
Of course there's a direct causation.
There's a correlation, but there's no proven, there's no evidence that slavery was the reason why Britain became a successful country.
Oh, of course.
No, there isn't.
I mean,
we were successful because of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, but part of the Industrial Revolution was tied to the slave economy, was tied to the fact that we were producing goods in the colonized countries.
A tiny percentage of our wealth came from that, and the vast majority of Britons didn't benefit by even a penny.
So how did Britain and the other colonizing countries become wealthy?
Because of the Industrial Revolution, I've just said.
The Industrial Revolution begins and occurs alongside colonialism and enslavement.
Ashok. If slavery was the reason why countries became wealthy, all the other empires, all the other countries that used slavery would also become wealthy in the same way that Britain did with the Industrial Revolution. And
the timeline goes like this, Julia. Capitalism begins in the capitalism begins in the 1500s. The transatlantic slave trade, which is the only form of slavery that was chattel slavery. If you look at the text from Roman and Greek slavery, it wasn't that the children of slaves were automatically slaves. And so then that form of property, that form of chattel slavery, happens only under capitalism. And then in the 1700s and 1800s, you have the Industrial Revolution, which was the direct monetary benefits of colonialism and enslavement would then go into feeding into the Industrial Revolution. I mean, this is
the idea that this was absolutely crucial to the Industrial Revolution is an absolute nonsense. I'm not sure if you are on a slave boat, if you are working in the fields as a slave, being treated as if you are literally cattle as a human being.
You were. I'm not
entirely sure it makes any difference whether it's chattel or whether the reality of those conditions was disgusting. However, it wasn't unusual in terms of how people were treated in human history. It's a terrible, terrible stain on humankind's history, but it's humankind's history and not purely Britain's or purely European nations. Here's the thing. If we are going to pay reparations to these countries, shouldn't we get reparations, or shouldn't those countries seek reparations themselves from the African nations which sold the slaves, who literally rounded up their own people and took them to the shore and put them on the slave ships? Why are they not asking for reparations from those countries? And if slavery was the cause of all this wealth, why are all those countries on the west coast of Africa not booming, successful industrial nations?
Actually, the proportion of wealth that was generated by the Portuguese set up the transatlantic slave trade. The proportion of wealth, of course, there was people that were slavers in the Western Cape of Africa.
Of course.
But the proportion, of course, there was. Just like you have, like, for example,
they were sold
sweatshops
by other black Africans. It was black Africans who sold black Africans.
Because the market was set up by the market.
So why don't you ask
for
why doesn't the Caribbean nations, why don't they ask for reparations?
Because it's not just slavery, it's also colonialism. If you read the it's not just that it was enslavement, it was also the colonialism that occurred well into the 20th century.
Why is colonialism bad?
You don't think colonialism is bad?
No, I'm asking you to answer the question.
I'll answer the question if you'll give me a moment. When Britain, for example, began its colonization of India in the 1700s, just an example, 27% of the world's GDP. India had 27% of the world's GDP. By the time India left, Britain left 200 years later, after millions had been starved to death in colonial-driven famines like in West Bengal and in Madras and other places, and theft, in 1947, India had 3% of global GDP. 90% of people were living below the poverty line, a literacy rate of 17%, and a life expectancy
because before
of 27.
colonialism, everything was great.
That's not what I'm arguing.
No,
what I'm
arguing
is it was theft. No, but
you're saying colonialism made it worse. I mean, other countries are getting richer, so obviously they would have a smaller percentage of
colonialism is good. That's what's. I mean,
I didn't say colonialism was good.
Want to apologize for colonialism?
I'm not. No,
that means even reform voters.
I'm not defending colonialism. I'm asking you to explain why you think people should get reparations.
I'm explaining why colonialism was bad.
Okay, but here's
the amount that was, even by UCL, for example, that did independent studies, said that 40 trillion was stolen from India over the course of those 200 years.
Okay. India isn't asking for reparations.
300 billion.
India isn't asking for reparations.
No, but you just asked me why colonialism was bad. I'm arguing. Yeah. I'm explaining to you why.
But India is one of the wealthiest countries in the world right now.
It's not one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Per capita,
I hate to tell you, that is where the future is. Asian countries is where the future is in the future of our world economy. But here's the thing. A lot of the people living in Caribbean countries right now, and I actually did live in a Caribbean country many years ago, are actually better off than many of the people living in some of the West African countries right now. That doesn't in any way justify the slave trade, make it okay.
So you think it was good? It was good that there were slaves?
No, you see, you've just made that point.
Is that what you're arguing? Is that the argument you're making?
This is why it's quite tedious having this. I literally just said that doesn't make the slave, like it was okay. I'm literally saying that, and at that point you then say, so you're saying it's okay. You know I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, why should people whose lives, as they are now, their ancestors had a horrific, disgusting time being treated as if they were animals and owned by other human beings. Those people, absolutely horrific lifestyle. But the people living in the Caribbean now, they are not suffering from either colonialism or from slavery. Indeed, they may be living, probably are living, and statistically I believe are, in most of those Caribbean countries, a better life than they would in West Africa. So why should they need reparations all these generations on?
The argument could simply be applied to every other instance. Why should people who are the descendants of people who are survivors of the Holocaust get reparations. You could make the same argument, but you wouldn't make that argument because you believe some people are deserving victims and other people aren't.
No, I think the people who actually suffered the Holocaust
and they're doing fine.
And their children, I think that's where you draw the line. So people who suffered from slavery and their children, I think you could argue there was an argument then, but I don't think that argument survives in 2025.
But it's not direct. By the way, it's not direct. If you actually read it, it's not direct money that they're asking for. They're asking for debt relief, development funds, technological transfers, climate resilience programs. You're acting like they're asking
money.
for direct.
It's coming
transfer.
out of our taxes. It'll still be money. It'll be money that Britain's been having. What about, for instance, someone who has come to the country, maybe someone from the Windrush generation, a Jamaican, a Barbadian, who's come to Britain to live here, perhaps on minimum wage, working here, who's paid taxes here, for their taxes to be paid, as someone who was perhaps descendant of slaves themselves in the Caribbean, and they're going to be asked to pay taxes to fund compensation to people back home in the Caribbean. Does that seem right?
It's not. The institutions that are being asked to pay are the big banks that directly benefit from slaves, from insurance houses, the Treasury. But
Treasury, who funds the Treasury?
8% of this population owns 50% of wealth. The lowest 50% own 5% of the wealth. You're acting like the everyday person is going to pay this out.
Yeah,
it's not.
The Treasury doesn't have any money. It's just us. It's
paid
just
out
us.
by the people that benefited from it and the institutions that benefit from it. And that's what they're asking.
Ultimately, they are all funded by us. But you can have the absurd situation where someone who's on minimum wage here is funding payments which ultimately go to some quite wealthy people in the Caribbean.
That wouldn't even happen. Yeah.
Isn't the issue in the Caribbean?
That wouldn't even happen.
Isn't this an issue in the Caribbean and also an issue in many African countries as well, that actually it is corrupt, kleptocratic, religiously clan-led rule that has been the problem for most of these people and most of these countries currently, and not colonialism. There are plenty of countries that have done perfectly fine without colonialism.
Look, this is the problem. You always attack the left as being woke and trying to forget history. You want to forget history now. You don't want Britain to take responsibility for any of its history. I think history matters. It's kind of a woke right argument. Let's forget about history. It was in the past. No, I think we need to honor Britain's history in both directions.
We should thank Britain for ending the slave trade. I'm very proud of my country.
We should thank Britain for being engaged in the slave trade?
For ending the slave because every society... Are we going to hate every country in the world because every country took part in the slave trade?
Every country didn't take part in the slave trade. This is just a flattening out of
the vast,
history.
Every empire, every major civilization used slaves until we stopped it. Wouldn't you? I mean,
that's ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous. It's literally
no, that's just not true.
No, they didn't. Everything was absolutely perfect until the Brits came along.
No, that's not what I'm arguing, and that's what these countries are asking for. They're not just saying Britain; they're saying all of the countries,
all the European countries, but they're not asking for reparations from the African countries that sold the slaves in the first place, rounded them up and sold their fellow human beings to the horrible white Europeans.
Yeah, Britain as an institution, as a state, committed these crimes.
No, there were kings in West Africa who committed these crimes. Actual countries.
Yeah.
But you're not. But the Caribbean isn't asking for reparations.
Whereas in Britain was a state operating as a state, was benefiting directly from
So were the West African states that sold them.
Yeah, well, they should ask them for reparations as well.
But why aren't they?
I don't know. But they.
You know so much about this.
What did you say?
You say you know so much about this, but you don't know why they're not asking the West African nations to pay up.
No, they should ask everyone who benefited.
Should we ask the Romans? Should the Brits ask the Romans? Should we ask the Italians to pay up for what the Romans did to us?
Yeah,
they enslaved the British people.
No, that's ridiculous.
Oh, that's too far away. What is the statute on limitations on reparations? So it's not.
Well, you set up the statute.
So you agree with me?
Saying, some people should. Some people are deserving of reparations.
The people who suffered it and their immediate first generation descendants. I think that's where I draw the line.
So would you say that people who suffered under colonialism should benefit from reparations? I'm not entirely
sure that anybody living in the Caribbean right now has suffered under colonialism. I
really?
think
Colonialism
probably
ended in
benefited
some
from it.
Caribbean. You think they benefited from colonialism?
Yeah, not from slavery,
the
but
plunder,
from
the wholesale
colonialism. Yeah.
plunder. Well, even colonialism, between 2 to 300 billion. This is again the UCL study that says that was stolen from Caribbean nations by Britain alone over the course of hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Well, I mean,
that's
again, it depends. Like, I mean, who lost out from that? Because I don't know about you. I know that my great grandparents were not living the life of Riley, benefiting from the slave trade. They were either working the fields in Ireland or working in a factory in Britain, working probably a 6.5-day week. I'm not entirely sure that most Britons feel that they've been living the benefits of colonialism.
From colonialism should pay that. The banks, the insurance houses,
and the Treasury,
state,
which doesn't have any money apart from us. I'm going to have to, let's shout it, I'm going to have to leave it here. Dr. Ashok Kumar, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you joining me. Associate Professor at Birkbeck University. We're going to have to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking about the 20-point plan for peace in Gaza. It's been agreed by the UN, but rejected by Hamas. That's up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I am so rudely left so little time for my next guest, Natasha Hausdorff, a barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Natasha, thank you for joining us. I know you can't actually move to later in the show. I'm mortified. But can you just explain to us what has happened? UN have agreed to this 20-point plan for Gaza, but Hamas have rejected it.
Well, the UN Security Council, in what I have to stress is a political, not binding, not legal, General Security Council resolution, has endorsed the 20-point plan. It's in fact included it in an annex. So this is a big victory for Trump's approach to practical diplomacy and what many people have called a pro-Israel approach here. But of course, yes, Hamas have indeed rejected it outright, which is perhaps surprising given that they did approve the 20-point plan in the first instance.
And they did release all the live hostages. I think we've still got 3 or 4 hostages' bodies that haven't been returned. And we've certainly
Yeah, that's a significant point because the 20-point plan said within 72 hours of Israel publicly agreeing all remaining hostages, alive and dead, would be returned. And of course, that's been broken. There were still 3 corpses that Hamas has refused so far to produce. So the 20-point plan has already been broken, but its endorsement here by the UN Security Council has been rejected by Hamas for other.
But Arab states have agreed. But the key thing is it does actually include sort of measures in terms of moving towards a Palestinian state. But this crucially also establishes an international stabilisation force to demilitarise the zone and disarm Hamas. But I mean, which other armies are going to go in? Because wouldn't they rather the IDF fought that battle, given the way that Hamas fights?
Well, that certainly begs the question, and it doesn't provide any answers. But I would just challenge this narrative that has erupted overnight about some form of endorsement of a Palestinian state. If you look at the wording, which reads, after the PA reform programme is faithfully carried out and Gaza redevelopment has advanced, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination.
There's a lot of provisos in there. But what does it actually mean for the people of Gaza in terms of actually, we've got the IDF have now withdrawn to the outskirts of Gaza, but we've still got Hamas in charge, executing people, goodness knows what, who they don't like right now. What does it actually mean for demilitarising Gaza?
It shows that there is an international consensus behind that, despite Hamas' opposition to it. But I think it also reframes a lot of the international discourse, especially as far as international law is concerned, around this conflict in a productive fashion. I mean, this resolution clearly makes it plain that there is no state of Palestine. I'm sure that's very embarrassing to the likes of Keir Starmer and the French and the Canadians who have purported to recognise this so-called state. In that respect, it probably provides a degree of hope moving this plan forward, and with its focus on economic measures and on rebuilding and establishing a positive future for the Palestinians in Gaza that is free of Hamas, it can be seen as a positive step.
Except Hamas are not going to walk away. They're not going to give up their power. They're not going to give up their guns. In fact, they're being offered free passage anywhere in the world to leave if they want to down their weapons. I'm wary of whether this is going to end where people think it is. Natasha Hausdorff, thank you so much for joining us. Apologies it was so short. Barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Now, I know, Benjamin Butterworth, you've been in Israel about whether there was some bombing. We'll come to you just after the top of the hour. Delighted to say in the next hour we are going to be talking about in a few moments' time to the Labour peer, founder of Blue Labour, the Labour peer, Lord Maurice Glassman. First time he's on the show. We're also going to be talking to Reform UK councillor Layla Cunningham about what's been announced by Nigel Farage this morning in terms of tackling the budget, what they would do, and also the ticket touts. Is the government really going to crack down on those ticket touts, or are we just going to create another black market? That's all coming up next here on Talk. This is the Home of Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is, as always, fabulous to have your company. So much to talk about. Don't forget, if you do miss any of the show, rip-roaring show, quite a lot of rows already so far. Heated debates, I think Mrs. Merton would have called them, with Benjamin Butterworth, journalist and broadcaster, who's joining me for the whole show. But if you've missed any of those, you do want to go to our YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It's really easy. You can find it really easily. Put those words into YouTube, subscribe, and then you don't have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood hitting back at her critics of her asylum reforms. Reform and Tories seemed quite keen on them if they actually went ahead. Labour backbenchers, Lib Dems, Greens, not so much. But actually, she hit back at them, even talking about how she herself had suffered from the division created by the failing asylum system, saying she'd be called the, well, she used the actual words, I won't, the effing P word, in the House of Commons. Also, we're going to be talking about why on earth migrant families would be deported and paid £3,000 each for the privilege of putting them on the plane. And why on earth are people who are in deportation centres, already earmarked for deportation, are, according to the front page of The Sun, being given free maths tutoring, exercise classes and God knows what else. Why are we paying for all of this? Especially as we are approaching the budget in just a week and a bit's time. And Rachel Reeves is being called on to slash welfare, slash the foreign aid budget by more than 90%. By Reform leader Nigel Farage speaking this morning. Welfare reform, a huge part of what is needed. But apparently we're just going to increase our spending on welfare by doing silly things like scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Well, in a couple of moments I'm going to be talking to a Labour peer about all of that. But we're also later in the show going to be talking about cracking down on the ticket touts. Reselling concert tickets for profit set to be banned by the government. But will that just mean instead of Viagogo or anyone else making money from those ticket tout sales, is it just going to be more on the black market? And how much can we trust when we buy those tickets if we weren't lucky the first time those tickets were issued? We'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides. I want to hear from you. Anything you want to talk about. Got a pretty full phone board already, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we've been talking about, including that debate on Caribbean reparations for slavery. Do get in touch, 03444 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with me on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate altogether now. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Right, as I say, Benjamin Butterworth is still with me. And just before we go to our next guest, I do want to give you a chance to come back on the conversation we had with Natasha Hausdorff about the UN Security Council, non-binding, it's non-legal, but basically endorsing the Trump 20-point peace plan. Hamas, though, have rejected it outright. The next stage, if they did release the final 3 remaining bodies of Israeli hostages, would be this sort of international sort of peacekeeping force. But I mean, do you think this is ever going to happen if Hamas are saying we ain't going anywhere?
I mean, I think it's more feasible than you would have ever imagined 6 months ago, because the reason this is possible is because the Arab world is behind this. You know, countries like Saudi Arabia, which have huge influence and power, are heavily supporting this. And also the way in which Israel has dismantled, Assad, Syria, Hamas, Lebanon with Hezbollah has been remarkably effective. And so actually I'm vaguely optimistic about peace. But, your debate before that was about colonialism. And I'd just point out that, Iran is the colonialist power, enslaving huge numbers of young men to go and die for these arguments in the Middle East. And yet no one ever mentions that. Yeah. And so, actually the threat is Iran. And you had Oxford University the other day.
Oh, don't even.
It's debating union, the Oxford Union, saying that Iran was more of a threat than Israel. So, I think
the Oxford Union's more of a threat than Israel.
I'm glad that the actual Arab world is more progressive and more aware than the Oxford Union and some of those people.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dee, for that. Just some breaking news for you, just coming in the last few moments. MI5 has issued a fresh China security warning to MPs over recruitment headhunters. Of course, we've had that China spy trial collapse, have we not, in recent months? But the security service, MI5, sent a warning to those working in Westminster about 2 new recruitment headhunters to watch out for specifically, and basically saying this used basically attempt to spy on what is going on in government by China. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Right, let's get to my first proper guest in this hour. And I'm so delighted he's joined us for the first time on the show in the studio. Lord Glassman. Maurice Glassman is a Labour peer and founder of Blue Labour. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Really great to get you in the studio to have a proper chat. Bit of a big issue in the news at the moment. Oh, not a small matter of the budget, how we're going to pay for everything, but the issue of immigration, which is a huge issue across the debate, across the aisle in politics right now. Do you think Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and her plan to deport failed asylum seekers, to get really tough, to end all the sort of the many appeals to basically fast track those deportations, to visa bans on countries that won't take their people back, you name it, all the stuff she's announced, even paying people more, just please go, get on the plane. Do you think, A, that's the right thing to do, and B, will it work?
Okay, first of all, lovely to be here.
It's not often the Labour people say that, to be fair.
No, it is, and compliments to your courage over the years. But also, Shabana is like you. She's a really determined, resolute woman who's not going to have any of this. She announced yesterday that the Home Office as a whole was broken. The asylum...
You knew that.
Okay, when did you last hear talk so openly about the failings of what she inherited? And she's put forward extremely radical plans for sorting out the asylum system, which is part of a wider plan about immigration, about stopping the boats, about sealing the border. Julia, sometimes in life you've got to say, "Core." She really did it.
She talks the talk. I mean, she's been talked as a potential leader, but we haven't seen her do anything yet.
So first
she's
of
got
all,
to get it through Parliament.
First of all, for your listeners to know, I know her very well, and I very much admire her. So even at Justice, she was doing things that went way. Look at the difference between Shabana Mahmood and David Lammy at Justice. You get the difference between someone who's really resolute. She does her work. Competent. She gets up early. She does her work. So I watched her at Justice and was very impressed. Now, it hasn't been that long since she's been at the Home Office, and this is a really comprehensive plan to address the concerns, particularly of working class people, about an asylum system and an immigration system that's out of control. So she is actually doing something. I've got to kick back a bit. These weren't just...
I mean, we should applaud. Even the Reform leader and the Tory leader have said, look, we'll support you if you can actually do this.
She's gone way further than any Conservative Home Secretary, way further. And this is part of a comprehensive plan to secure the borders, assert sovereignty, which she says is an existential matter for the British state. If we can't do this, she feels...
OK, but she hasn't done that. She has announced she's going to do it. We haven't seen the bill that has to go through Parliament for some of these measures. Some of these measures she could institute.
Yeah, she's pretty keen on...
Is she going to get it past the Labour backbenchers? She's going to, I mean, there's a massive majority. But Keir Starmer couldn't get the most basic welfare reforms passed.
Yeah, but I mean, Shabana's a serious politician. So the situation in Parliament is... What I was astonished at yesterday was... At the beginning of her talk, the Labour MPs were quite silent, but by the end they were cheering. And what they saw was leadership. What she did was she actually put the moral case, the political case, and I've got you can call me back any time if I get this wrong. This is going to fly through. It's not
there
just
will be the support.
Well, absolutely, and there will be the support very unusually from across the Commons.
But here's the thing: if exactly the same MP sat in Parliament and it was a Tory government and they announced this, Shabana Mahmood as Shadow Home Secretary and all of your mates in the Labour hierarchy would be denouncing this as racist, as outrageous, as bigoted, as xenophobic, and it won't work. That's what they do. Why is it OK if Shabana Mahmood announces it, but not if Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch announces it?
The world is on the turn. I mean, Trump was elected, that's one thing. I still think we're living in the reverberations of the Brexit vote. She's a sovereigntist. She's very unusual.
She believes in the nation state.
Yeah, very
That's
old.
Unusual.
Well, she's in the spirit of Bevin, of Blue Labour, of all of us who love sovereignty and wish to promote the interests of working class people in our politics, called Labour, Julia, for a reason.
This is the thing. I was going to ask you, just for our audience who, got jobs and lives and other things to be doing than following a load of the nonsense going on inside political parties. The organisation that you founded, Blue Labour, what does it... Tell us a bit more about what it stands for.
Well, we're sovereigntists.
Do you believe in the nation state and border control?
As a matter of faith, right? That Labour historically has always been like this. I mentioned Ernest Bevin, Peter Shaw, Clement Attlee, all these people. Absolutely.
There was a time when Labour was opposed to joining the EEC because of that.
Well, I was very strong for Brexit. I campaigned very hard for Brexit. That was one of the greatest days of my life, the referendum.
Still for me, absolutely.
And everything changed because we knew that after that, democracy is beautiful. So democratic sovereignty, we're much too conservative to ever be in the Conservative Party. We're very strong for family, for patriotism, for good manners, but we're socialist in our economics. We want to see an industrial strategy. We want to see us making things again.
You want the state to have more of a role in the market economy?
Yeah, for sure.
Or do you want no market economy?
No. Yeah, but what we don't want...
Not communist, though. You wouldn't take away the
we hate communism. That's not what we're about. It's not that difficult.
Your experience of the British state is that the British state would be better at running a lot of this stuff than the private market.
No, my experience of the British state is that it's been decimated over 50 years, that we're being run by infantilised people who don't want to... So what Shabana's done, the significance, everybody, of yesterday, a democratically elected politician took a lead and said, we have to do this. But on that, what's vital for the state is the armed forces. We have to rebuild our army. We have to rebuild our weapons production.
Honestly, you could think that you were talking to a reform politician.
No, because Nigel Farage is a Putin appeaser and a saloon bath.
He's not a Putin appeaser.
Yes,
I tackled him on their...
No.
What has he done to appease Putin?
Right, he's always talking...
I've got that. Appease Putin. Got it right.
What he has opposed consistently the escalation of the war in Ukraine,
and I disagree with him on
that. And I disagree with him. The second thing is, deep down in his soul is a saloon bar Thatcherite. He loves that. What we've got to recognise that we need an industrial strategy without a partnership with the state, with the private sector. We're not going to be able to rebuild the capacity of our armed forces, and only the state could do.
How are we going to rebuild our industrial strategy if we've still got Ed Miliband as the, ruining the British economy one solar panel at a time, and energy secretary?
As they say, step by step. This is a very important thing that happened yesterday, and John Healey, who is the Defence Secretary, who I also respect, is absolutely resolute about this. That essentially they've got to double the size of the army, and the weapons production has got to go on in the UK. So the industrial strategy is on the back
all part
of the
of
weapons.
that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Two of the people you've mentioned there and talked of very fondly with great praise, Shabana Mahmood and Healey, both are people who've been named in the papers over the last week or so as potential successors to Keir Starmer. Now, one of the things with Shabana Mahmood, one assumes that the Home Secretary signed off her asylum plans with Keir Starmer. He's given up trying to smash the gangs. That ain't worked. They're going to try this way. I mean, no mention of smashing the gangs at all for the last few weeks.
Things move, Julie. Sometimes you've got to get over it. In politics, things move.
No, Rishi Sunak didn't stop the boats. He hasn't smashed the gangs. Now we're going to try something else. Once they're here, we're going to try and get rid of them. Well, we'll see. We'll see if it happens. I think our audience...
All I ask,
to a man and a woman, say, good luck with it, but it won't work.
Yeah, and that's the sceptical, that's the cynical position. All I'm asking you is just look on Shabana with a kind heart. Just give her the benefit of the doubt.
I always do if someone comes up with a sensible idea.
What she did yesterday was very brave and very unusual.
Now, here's the thing, though. OK, so you're talking about some Labour values. I think a lot of my audience, people say, oh, you're right, we're going to do it. A lot of them would sign up to. But there are an awful lot of people in this Labour government, and indeed on Labour benches, who, let's face it, don't get it. They are hand-wringing liberal left. They're with the Green Party in terms of put a solar panel everywhere, no such thing as borders, welcome the world in.
John Lennon, imagine.
Yeah, put everyone on welfare.
Yeah.
The trouble is you've got an awful lot of backbenchers and, frankly, quite a lot of people in your government, the human rights lawyers, possibly including the Prime Minister, who don't get it.
OK, first, just the trivial thing is that Keir Starmer did appoint Shabana Mahmood, knowing full well what she's like. So that's also a big shift in his worldview. But that's guess what? It's politics, and people have different views, and there's a genuine battle going on inside Labour. That's what I'm saying to you. These people are my opponents. You know, I want to see sovereignty, I want to see industrial strategy, I want to see the building up, and welfare reform, absolutely. Blue Labour is very, very devoted to the memory of Frank Field and contribution. I gave the Frank Field Memorial Lecture a couple of weeks ago. This is where we are. Now, what you've got to recognise is that we're alive in this game, and we're actually engaging with this.
But your party couldn't get through 5 billion reforms. Now, I didn't think they were the right 5 billion. They were going to cut disability benefits as opposed to cutting access to them for people who frankly don't need them. We've got 4 million people who are currently on some sort of incapacity benefit where they don't have any requirement to look for work. It's someone with tennis elbow, for goodness sake.
And not all disabilities are visible, remember? So we've got all this as well. So there's got to be a discussion about sanity. I mean, it's a huge shift. And the welfare reform, absolutely, because we should be generous, loving and compassionate to people with real disabilities. But this has gone way beyond. It started under Thatcher, you know, with the miners where they all went on disability.
But Andre, in Duncan Smith under the Conservatives, he massively got it down. We had more working households, fewer non-working households, people back in work, and of course it all went completely up the waxing during lockdown, and it's got worse ever since. But here's the thing, you know, we're a year and a half in to the Labour government.
5-year government.
To a 5-year term.
It's a year and a half in.
Year and a half in. It takes a couple of years to get anything done. They've not even started trying to tackle welfare reform, not even started realistically to tackle illegal migration. They don't have a chance of achieving any of this stuff before the next election. Does Keir Starmer survive the budget? Does he survive next May's elections in Scotland, Wales and local elections in England?
Yeah, look, I genuinely don't pay too much attention. All journalists, all they want to talk about is leadership.
Well, it's what matters, isn't it? Whoever's the leader. I mean, is it Jeremy Corbyn or is it Keir Starmer? Completely changes the policies.
And just to let everybody know, I was very much in favour of Keir Starmer over Jeremy Corbyn. That's for sure. And I did appreciate a lot of the things that he did internally in the party. But here's the issue. Reality has really changed. The election of Trump, I think, was a really big shift.
The second election.
This one, I went to the inauguration and I saw real working class rage. You know, they were throwing, Julia, their lanyards in the bin, going, free at last, free. Yeah. And this is here. This is with us. So Labour really was built by the working class, for the working class, but it shouldn't be too difficult to pivot back into being the tribune of the working class. That's how the next election. So I think it's taken, you know.
Does Keir Starmer get that?
Look, our children went to university. You know, they go to university and they get stupid. They believe in lots of stupid things. It's a really big issue. And so what I think we've had is, first year of the government, where they're completely baffled and astounded by reality, because it wasn't human rights law and just words.
They thought it was going to be easier than it is.
Much. And I think what I'm seeing is, and particularly yesterday with Shabana, is actually waking up to the reality of government. So I think it's a crucial turning point.
I'm very intrigued by that. Do you think Shabana's the future Labour leader?
Look, I think your audience should know that she's my friend and I love her very much. So
the answer to that is
I don't
yes.
talk about that.
What do you make of what the Tories have announced today? I mean, they're talking about massive, tens of billions in welfare cuts. So is reform. Reform's also talking about cutting the foreign aid budget down from, in the teens to just £1 billion a year, the money to the UN and others. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't think much at all. I think the Conservatives had 13 years talking it up all the way through.
Kemi Badenoch wasn't leader.
No, but
that's what she said. She wasn't leader then. But we are now. Well, I mean,
what I mean is that I don't think the Conservative Party are a serious force in politics anymore. I think Reform are.
Okay. So what do you make of Reform's policy suggestions?
Yeah, I think that there's an element of chances about them. I don't think they've really sorted out. Danny Kruger's a very interesting and very serious person.
And he's the Tory MP who went over
who I respect. So I think they are going to develop serious state reform. I think there will be common ground between Labour and Reform as we move into the next election.
Where we are right now in politics, I mean, such as you can predict anything in a week's time. We haven't even got the budget yet, or next May elections, let alone elections coming up by 2029. Do you think that, as many people, I mean, I didn't think at the time, but many people said, in July 24, Labour are going to win 2 terms, no question. I always thought that was nonsense. I always thought 1 term only because they're going to mess it up so badly. Do you think Keir Starmer survives the full term? Does he fight another election and does he win it?
I think that Labour will emerge at the end of this government competitive with reform. I think it's going to be.
But it's a two-horse
race completely, and that's why what Shabana did yesterday was so important. If Labour can move into this terrain, stop the boats, build the army, have an industrial strategy, and reform welfare, Labour's going to be very competitive.
If people can actually see the reality, well, it can't be a promise. It has to be the reality.
It's got to be action. This era is an era of action.
What about the concerns on the left of the party? So many of the Red Wall MPs, the ones who got their seats back from the Tories and facing challenges from reform, that's what they want. But many MPs who'd be part of Blue Labour, what about the MPs off in the leafy shires who are facing challenges from the Lib Dems, from the Greens? They're going to be wanting completely the opposite. Is there now a big issue for Labour? And the Tories to a certain extent have had this, but I think Labour more so, where you've just got two completely separate constituencies. You've got working class, largely Midlands and North families, and you've got the university towns, the liberals, the graduates who want the so-called progressives, the cultural people. They want completely different things.
Yeah, look, it's not really a great shock to you to know that there's a real battle going on. It's politics. What's great about this new era, and what I really like about what Shabana did, we've been ruled by judges and experts. I hate it. What I want to see is real contested politics going on in the House of Commons. And so, Julia, there are deep divisions in the party, and that is being actually sorted out in real time. You judge which way it's going.
Fascinating. So great to have you in. Lord Glassman, Labour peer, founder of Blue Labour. I'm sure you enjoyed that. Love to hear your thoughts on what he had to say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Get Benjamin Butterworth's thoughts as well. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. It's just coming up to 12:25. Benjamin Butterworth still with me. Fascinating to have Lord Glassman in the studio. I mean, I think that pretty much everything he said, a load of people who've been voting Tory for years or voting Reform this time round would go, yeah. They'd be nodding away, going, how am I agreeing with basically a Labour politician?
I mean, Lord Glassman has been making these arguments for a long time. He was chastised within the Labour hierarchy until very recently. I think what's really interesting was what he describes as believing that there is a real shift in Labour's thinking and how it approaches these questions. Desperate. Well, he makes the point that, Keir Starmer obviously knew what he was doing in appointing Shabana Mahmood. And so does that mean that there is an ideological fight going on and it is people like Lord Glassman who appears to be winning?
I don't think that Keir Starmer has an ideological bone in his body. I think he doesn't believe in anything at all. He's completely an empty suit.
Well, I mean, but I suppose that still doesn't, redact the point that the argument is happening.
The same announcement made by Reform or the Tories, he would have decried as racist. I'm telling you that right now.
I don't think he would, because
Yeah, he would.
precisely because I think he would have known if he were the opposition leader where the wind was blowing. But I mean, it was fascinating to hear Lord Glassman lay that out. And the question it raises is, will there be more people like Shabana Mahmood and that approach who will rise to the top? Because we're early in a Labour government, relatively early, and so there's a lot of new blood. Will it be of that
You say
sway?
relatively early. So a year and a half in. I mean, you're basically doing the campaign for the next election after a year. They've got a year and a half at best, really. But anyway, we shall see. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 and what he had to say. Lots of calls coming in. Interestingly, in reaction to your and my conversation about benefits, it will not surprise you to learn, Benjamin. Of course, I was right and he was wrong. Usual rules.
I was agreeing with reform.
That's true. You were, and I've had my rows with Nigel Farage and indeed Sarah Poachin about their ideas on a two-child benefit cap and bringing it back, getting rid of it, so which I think is insane. Alice is on the line in Manchester. She wants to have her say. Good afternoon to you, Alice.
Hello, how are you, Julia?
Hello.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I heard you debate with Benjamin, and Benjamin, you're totally wrong.
They told you.
I am wholeheartedly with you, Julia. I work on frontline services on benefits and universal credit, and this is it. I mean, the benefit cap should be kept. If it's scrapped, it just gives a pay rise to all those families that have just a career. They're just a career on benefits. And they treat it as a career.
But there's lots of people. I mean, the bleeding hearters, the hand riggers. They're like, no one would do that. Everyone wants to work. They want to do the best by their kids. If you want to do the best by your kids, you go and get a job and you support them, right?
Exactly. Yes.
It's that simple.
Yeah, it really is, and there's no, and so the benefit cap. Why do they not? If that's the case, if you're telling me, Benjamin, that 10-year-olds are going hungry, that's down to the parents, as you said, Julia. So what we should be doing is giving them like food vouchers. Don't give them money, because what happens is that goes on their nails, that goes on their TVs, it goes on their phones. It doesn't go where it's supposed to go, to their children, because these people, unfortunately, have never worked, and they're at home. They can't really budget. So it's just so easy. We're just going to it doesn't solve the problem. You're just making the problem worse.
And we're constantly told every parent's doing their best by their child. I mean, they're patently not. No. Benjamin, I'll give you a right to reply.
Well, if someone has 3 or 4 children and then a parent, gets cancer or has some tragic accident, then they can't pay for their kids through no fault of planning or failure to account for themselves. I don't think it's right that children should suffer the consequences of adults' mistakes or misfortunes.
What do you say to that, Alice? Is there help for parents in those circumstances?
Yeah, and there is help there, Benjamin. There is help there, Benjamin, because what would happen, because that's what there's so many benefits that they can claim. They do get help, but also they get support through going to get work as well. Maybe they could do part-time work and they get support through that. There is enough benefits in this country. We do not, please, I do not, that's the only thing to reform. He doesn't, not to scrap the benefit cap. Kemi is correct.
Yeah.
Oh, no, is it? Who is it? No, she said that she's going to introduce it. No, all it does...
No, Kemi says she would absolutely bring it back. Yeah.
Right. No. And a lot of the colleagues that I work with were totally against it, because these people, the families that have them, they're sat on the... And honestly, Benjamin, if you worked, you would understand.
Yeah.
I do work.
No, but if you worked on the benefit camp, this is exactly the same thing my friend has always told me, who does exactly the same to people who are face-to-face and see the choices that people are genuinely choosing to make. Alice, thank you very much for backing me up. I appreciate that. Che is on the line. She's in Durham. She wants to have her say on that heated debate. Afternoon to you, Che.
Hi, yeah. I don't think that we should scrap the cap. I've worked all my life, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week.
Ouch.
I've currently stopped being able to work for about 2.5 years due to having a child with a disability.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I have been fighting and trying to get back into work because my daughter wasn't allowed an education, so I had to fight for her to get an education.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to try and fight to get a job because I am now classed as unreliable because of having a child with disabilities.
Yeah. Who has to come first, because that's how it works when you're a parent. But we need to give the support for people like you, trying to do the right thing.
That's what they should do. I don't think they should just scrap the. I believe they should keep the cap and help the parents like myself and other parents that really want to get into work but are classed as unreliable because of having a child with disabilities. And being able to get back into work, because I would love to, and I could easily have another. I would love to have another child, but it's just not possible, and I don't believe that I should, because I wouldn't be able to go to work.
And you make those responsible choices, exactly. Che, so appreciate your call. Listen, I wish you the best of luck, and I can't imagine how hard that is. But you know, you're a mum. Your child always has to come first in those scenarios. What else can you do? I so appreciate your call. 12:31 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk to Reform UK's Layla Cunningham about what's been talked about in terms of not just Labour's policy on dealing with asylum, but also the announcements we have from Nigel Farage today in terms of what he would do if he was doing the budget next week. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, 12:33. Just before we go to our next guest from Reform, I do just want to come back, Benjamin Butterworth, on this announcement we found out about about half an hour ago about MI5. And Security Services sent a warning to people working in Westminster about 2 recruitment headhunters they need to watch out for, who basically recruitment headhunters working on behalf of the Chinese authorities. They've been warned off attempts to spy on them. And the message basically says, a message from parliamentary authorities to those working Westminster. Anyway, it's a good few thousand people. It's not just the 650 MPs. Writing to you now to draw your attention to the attached espionage alert issued by the Security Services MI5 to the parliamentary community. This alert highlights how the Chinese Ministry of State Security is actively reaching out to individuals in our community. Their aim is to collect information and lay the groundwork for long-term relationships using professional networking sites, recruitment agents, and consultants acting on their behalf. Westminster employees are warned that the particular pair, are both known to be reaching out on LinkedIn to conduct outreach at scale on behalf, basically, of China. They're targeting people. Now, we've had that China spy trial, which did collapse, and of course these allegations are unproven against 2 men. As a result of the government not providing information about China being an enemy state, which it clearly is, and that trial has collapsed. And we don't want to in any way, imply guilt over people who've never actually faced a fair trial. But there is no doubt a massive concern about what China is doing. But it is fascinating. It's almost so obvious. It's like, organisations, headhunters say, "Oh, let's get in," and then they basically, get people in, work and work with parliamentary researchers, and then basically try and influence policy, but also glean information.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinarily brazen what they're doing, and the idea that the head of MI5 has put out a warning like this is, not usual. It's rare that they make public statements on questions like this. The last one I remember was on Iran, and so the fact that they're saying that they're being so blatant that they're reaching out by official methods to people that work in the parliamentary estate, that work close to that, they must be very concerned that there are people being enticed into working for the Chinese state. And we know that they spy and use espionage on Brits and in our parliament on a remarkable scale, and they make no apology for it.
They bought up our universities. It's extraordinary, and we've seen that also with Qatar as well. We can see from my studio, look out the window, the site where they want to build this Chinese sort of mega super embassy. That, we're told, has been delayed. A decision on that, I think, delayed to December. But again, overruling, we're told that the government wants to overrule Tower Hamlets, the local East End council, who said, no, you can't build it next to Tower Bridge, basically next to Tower of London, but also over very, very close to cables that are crucial cables leading to the City of London. Anyone who's got half a brain is saying this is insane to allow this mega embassy to go ahead. It's got redacted planning, plans actually showing this massive basement. Oh, no, we're not allowed to know what's in there. Well, I doubt it's, a cuddly toy storage facility. I mean, the reality is we're going to have to wake up to this threat, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to store the boo-boos in their embassy, right? they want to spy on what we're doing. And what's extraordinary is, for the head of MI5 to do this is a warning shot to government and to policymakers to say,
take it seriously.
You cannot be so lax towards this threat.
Okay.
China makes no apology about doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Benjamin Butterworth. Let's go to my next guest now, and she is Layla Cunningham, Reform UK councillor. She also co-leads Reform's Law and Order campaign and joins us right now. Very good afternoon to you, Layla.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Lots I want to talk to you about in terms of lots of announcements and speeches today as well. But I want to talk first of all about the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. She's been leading a lot of the news the last few days about her plan to tackle illegal migration, to basically speed up deportations. Talk about paying people £3,000, including families per person, to leave the country, ending these interminable appeals, and basically insisting that refugee status is given only on a temporary basis every 2.5 years. It'll be renewed. And also, as we found out at the weekend, plan to have visa bans eventually, take quite a long time, on various countries, particularly tackling some African countries that refuse to take people back, and also basically saying if you do get permanent settlement here, it'll only be granted after 20 years, not after 5 years. So, I mean, what's not to like about that, and would you support those policies?
No, I wouldn't. And
why not?
I don't think Reform will, because, they're calling it the toughest reform since the war. That's nonsense. Tough is actually when you remove people and actually stop them coming into the country and treat illegal entry into this country as a crime and a bar from claiming asylum. Why are we even discussing payments to foreign criminals? £3,000 instead of being removed immediately.
Such a huge sum of money as well.
Only a failed state, Julia, pays criminals to obey the law. We need to stop bribing people to go home and show some muscle, stop them from coming in, and if they do and commit a crime, then we deport them. And then, if
okay, first I say they won't get on the plane. They've got all these different appeals. Okay, you could take away all these different rights of appeal. What do you do to get someone onto a plane? We're not chartering our own, aircraft to get, this particular person back to Sudan or wherever. What do you do to get them on the plane? Are we allowed to drug them? What are we going to do? Tie them down?
Listen, I've seen people who didn't want to come to court as a criminal prosecutor. You have people who escort them to court. You escort them to the plane. We cannot let foreign criminals come here and bribe us. It's almost an incentive. And I think her other thing, which is where if you come here, you get you only get 2 years. And that's reviewed every 2 years or something. I'm sorry, that's a 2-year fully supported, all-inclusive stay. That's not a deterrent, that's an incentive. Anyone who reaches our borders is going to be welcomed and supported for 2 years.
So as far as you're concerned, this won't wash. Now, Nigel Farage has been fairly welcoming and saying, well, it sounds like she should come and join the Reform Party. So he's rather more welcoming than you.
He said the rhetoric is right, and they're right. She's trying to sound tough, but as usual, the devil's in the detail. And then she says, we're going to remove them when their country is safe. Another fancy sentence, because you and I know Afghanistan, that's not going to be safe ever. And so what's she talking about? And then, Julia, which I find quite disturbing, is that she says that she wants to offer community sponsorship to let communities sponsor people to come. But who are these communities? Who gets to vet them? Because in places like Rotherham and Rochdale, those communities protected rapists. And are they going to be able to sponsor more people to come in? And then you did mention, sorry to rant, but you did mention 3 countries that she's going to ban visas from.
Yeah.
Only a handful of those came on boats. Those are not the countries we're interested in. I want to see visa bans to Afghanistan, to Eritrea, to Pakistan. But we'll see about that because she has a political base to protect.
And this is one of the concerns, isn't it? Why do you think that the government is suddenly talking tough on this? I mean, because, we had Rishi Sunak, of course, the Tories. He failed to stop the boats. That was his rhetoric. He stood there in front of podiums. We've had this Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, talking about smashing the gangs. No one's talking about smashing the gangs anymore.
No, and I can assure you, and I think Nigel alluded to it today, I mean, if it wasn't for reform, we wouldn't be hearing any of this. Don't forget that we have a Home Secretary who said that she wanted to give amnesty to illegal workers.
She did say that a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I think she was, I did see a video, I don't know if it's true, of her welcoming illegal migrants to Greece or some kind of shore. The conviction of the party is not there, and that's why I don't think it will make any difference. We've never had to get tough. We've always been tough. We've always prioritised the British public over foreign illegal migrants.
Okay.
I mean,
well, let's talk about basically preferential treatment for the British people and not giving £3,000 to illegal migrants and criminals. Welfare reform. This morning, Zia Youssef and your party leader Nigel Farage both talked about welfare reform, the huge savings that could be found there, but also about foreign aid reform, cutting the current bill of £14 billion a year down to just £1 billion a year. How does that work?
Well, I mean, we're giving billions abroad. And taxing the taxpayer to pay for it. Rachel Reeves is about to hammer us with tax rises, and yet we're sending up to 13 billion abroad. Why are we doing that? We should start at home, and that's basically what it's about. They've found cuts, and these are emergency cuts, I guess, that could be done immediately. That will save us £25, and as they said, it's a choice to increase tax.
But it's a choice in terms of welfare reform. Is a choice to scrap the two-child benefit cap, an extra £3,500 for each child that anyone who's on universal credit will get for any child born after the first two. Now, that's currently in place. The Tories, Kemi Badenoch said today, if that is scrapped by Labour, as they look like they're likely to do in the budget next week, they will reinstitute it. We just had, callers saying, look, absolutely, you need to keep the cap, including someone who works on the benefits front line. And yet, reform policy is to scrap the cap and to basically pay people who can't afford the kids they've already got to have more kids.
Yeah, because we want it. Number one, it's for families who are working.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, universal credit is available to people who work. The vast majority who are on it aren't working.
I think Nigel was clear that he wants to keep it for families that work. We want to encourage parents to work. And
how much do you have to work? Because a working family now is when dad does like a few hours a week. That's not what most people listening right now, most reform supporters don't just do a few hours a week and they go, oh, I can't make ends meet, I'll get the taxpayer to pay for me. They do extra hours. Mum and dad are both working.
No, I mean, the truth is childcare is expensive, Julia, in this country.
It is. There's a lot of subsidies for it as well, paid for by tax.
Nursery is expensive. And, it's tough also on a woman. For instance, a woman gets a year's maternity leave, a dad only gets 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, when he starts carrying babies and breastfeeding, then he can get more, can't he?
Yeah, I'm just saying. No,
I mean, really, though. I mean, sort of. We're not the same. We're not the same.
No, definitely not the same. Definitely not the same. What I'm saying.
I don't remember my husband having morning sickness for 3 months. I think he did all right.
But I think a lot of women, the problem is that after that year, women find it hard to get back into the workplace because they've been out of it for so long.
Their jobs are legally held open for them for a year.
It's different when you actually return. They are, I think it's 6 months. I don't think it's a year.
No, it's a year now. But again, this is the thing. I keep having this with reform people, and I really like you, Leila, but you guys need to start knowing some detail on your policies. I don't understand why your party has a policy when making choices about how taxes are spent, think that giving money to parents who don't support and can't already support, choose not to support the children they've already got to have more kids. I think that's insane.
I don't think so. We have a very low birth rate.
But we should definitely want more kids born to parents who already don't work.
Nigel said that the child benefit would go to families in work.
Well, the two-child benefit cap is for all parents. Most of those parents don't work, and if they do work, it's one person who works a few hours a week.
Well, we didn't say that we'd implement it as is. We said that we want to encourage families to work and have children.
Okay.
We're not going to adopt the policy verbatim.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see about that. In terms of where we are in terms of the budget, though, your party's had to get a bit more serious about the budget, isn't it? Lots of talk about tax cuts, which everyone would love, but the reality is the numbers don't add up anymore. What else is your party looking at to deal with this? Because look, you're a part of the Law and Order campaign. You know that actually, you know, justice system, policing, it costs money, and you can't do this stuff on the cheap. We've seen under austerity it doesn't work. There's actually a lot more things that your supporters will want you to spend money on. But how are you going to afford to do that if you don't cut other areas or raise taxes?
I mean, Julie, it's about it's about choice.
Yeah.
And right now we have the highest tax burden since World War II, and I don't think anyone feels that the public services are the best they've been.
Understatement of the year.
Well, exactly. So we have a decreasing productivity rate for the public sector, and people are working harder and harder to pay for it. So it's not about more money. It's not about more taxes. It's about spending it right.
Okay.
And I think that's what the Reforms press conference was about today. It's starting to prioritise those that work and British people at home. For instance, is it the NHS surcharge? It's a scam. You know, British taxpayers are subsidising foreign nationals by up to 62%. So again, that would be a huge saving.
And we don't really have an idea because they say there's a small number of people who are using it. We have no idea how many. No one bothers checking. No one fills in a form.
No, well, exactly that. But the problem is that we have a political class that says tough decisions must be made. But their tough decision is always about taxing the British taxpayer or cutting British services while shoveling money overseas or to foreigners. And that's got to stop.
OK, well, we shall see. Layla Cunningham from Reform UK, thank you so much for joining us. 12:47 is the time. Benjamin Butterworth, quick reaction to that?
Well, I have to say she didn't seem very good on the detail of being able to explain their ideas, and I think that's
Nigel often isn't too, to be fair.
That is the fundamental problem with Reform UK, in that they have a rhetoric that clearly is popular, they do well in the polls, but their ability to explain how they do it, what the actual bits and bobs of their suggestions would be, it's just not there.
OK, well, there you are then. There you are. You've been told, Layla. 12:47 is the time, as I say. Going to take a quick break. They're going to be talking about the ticket touts, the ones who buy up all those concert tickets that you were trying to get. You were sitting there on the internet for an hour or 2 hours, 6 hours even, and couldn't get a ticket. And then those tickets suddenly available at 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 times the price. Should we ban that? But what will the effect be? Well, we'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. And when was the last time you tried to buy a concert ticket? And did you sit there for hours and hours on the internet, knowing they were all coming on sale at 9 a.m. and then failed to get tickets, and only about an hour later you see they're on sale, not for 80 quid or 150 quid, but for, you know, sometimes even into the thousands of pounds. Certainly saw that happen with Taylor Swift, with Coldplay, other bands. But also, of course, we had that big scandal in autumn last year where Oasis actually surged the price, the ticket sellers themselves surged the price while people were sitting waiting online. Well, let's talk about all of this with Harry Kind, consumer expert at the everyday expert. A very good afternoon to you, Harry.
Afternoon, hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, the reason we want to talk to you today is the government has basically said they are planning on banning this, reselling concert tickets for profit other than a small charge for admin will be outlawed. How would that work?
Well, it would work in pretty much the same way that it works in most of the other countries that do this. So Ireland, Italy bans this. You've got Denmark, Portugal. They have similar schemes in place. And essentially, what we'd be looking at here is the Competition and Markets Authority, the competition watchdog, would be able to fine any companies that were allowing the resale of these tickets for profit on their sites.
So there's and also these, we go to these sites like the Viagogo and all these other sites because you just go, oh, well, Ticketmaster. You think, well, it's legitimate. At least if I buy a ticket from them rather than a bloke outside Wembley, I can be sure it's a legit ticket, or I'll get my money. You know, they're guaranteeing that effectively. But I mean, a lot of the effort so far has been on trying to stop, you know, bots buying up tickets en masse. So there's a limit; you can only buy 4 tickets or whatever in a go. And then of course these companies just basically started hiring people who would just literally sit there themselves and doing it. But the rest of us, you know, people have to go to work. On the day these big concerts get sold out, a lot of people at work, they have to go to a meeting. They can't, you know, they're driving a van. They can't be sitting there, you know, at 9 a.m. just pressing, reset every few minutes. So is this the best way of tackling it? So it's not about stopping people buying them. It's just that once you bought them, you're not going to make any money, so there's no point.
Yeah, I do think this is the easiest and kind of it requires the least kind of technical ability, really, to shut this down. You know, we can do all we can to put in hurdles, and a lot of the big artists like Ed Sheeran have put those hurdles in place, trying to stop bots, making sure that you have to register and link your name to a ticket. Glastonbury putting in all their measures. Ultimately, that's a bit of a burden on the fan. It's also a lot of a burden for, you know, artists to undertake. I don't know why we're letting the policing of all this go to the artists at the moment. And this would basically say, look, you know, it's not just the ticket touts making a lot of money from this. It's the people who own the marketplaces. It's your Viagogos, it's your StubHub, who take their share and sit back happily in Silicon Valley.
Surely the people, the bands, they're unhappy about this. I mean, what happened with Oasis and their surge pricing was a completely different sort of the outrage for a lot of people. They thought it was, you know, I'm on the website on the basis there are tickets available at this price and they're now 10 times the price, or whatever they were. But here's the thing. I mean, is it anyone's business what you know, a ticket to Coldplay or you know, Taylor Swift goes? It's the market. If you don't get them, like you don't have a human right to a ticket to see a particular act, and you don't have to pay the sky high prices. But if someone wants to, then they can. It's a free market. Frankly, what the hell has it got to do with the government?
See, I'd be sympathetic to the free market argument, but for the fact that I don't think it's a free market to start with. I don't think the primary market is free market. I think Taylor Swift could charge 2, 3, 4 times as much for her tickets and pocket all that profit. But I think she and we as a society have this vested interest in actually making fans go to stadiums. We want to have an audience
not being seen to fleece people.
What you don't want is just basically to have the richest of the rich being able to afford these. And so what you do is you have this kind of like artificially low cost to go and see Taylor Swift, which means, you know, a teenage girl can go and see Taylor Swift, albeit with a little bit of extra pocket money. It means that you actually have a cultural experience going on. What we don't want is effectively, you know, this to be a private members club, and that, you know, only anyone who doesn't have a, you know, 6-figure salary can't afford someone who's on Radio 1.
Isn't in the Labour cabinet and getting a freebie. I mean, that's the thing. What about the argument that people will just go to the black market and these tickets are always going to be resold and people are going to want to make a profit on them and they will sell them on the black market because there's even less protection for the buyer?
Yeah, so 2 points on this. the social media companies are included in this, so they would also be liable if, on Facebook Marketplace or equivalent, people are selling these tickets.
And,
So that's
and
one.
basically, how are you going to find your buyer otherwise? Yeah.
Exactly right. I also think, that is a common argument that we hear for, say, increasing the price of cigarettes, is that people will be able to buy them on the black market.
And they do.
This is doing the opposite. This is lowering the price of tickets for most people. And so I do think that it will basically get a kind of cultural idea of, if you're not paying face value, there's something dodgy going on. And that, I think, is very valuable.
Very interesting. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Kind is a consumer expert, the everyday expert. It's interesting that other countries have done this and it's been absolutely fine, because the warnings we've had so far is that it's just gone to the black market, the government interfering, Benjamin Butterworth, with the market. But it does feel very unfair. I mean, there's literally a whole organisation aimed at basically fleecing people who want to go and see their favourite band.
Yeah, I mean, I must say it's quite novel to hear Taylor Swift tickets described as artificially low. I think they were really quite expensive.
Well, my journey home from work every day involved going up the train line that goes up to Wembley, and literally for weeks it was just full of girls in sequins looking unbelievably happy with their tickets, an embarrassed dad and a very happy mum. But I'm thinking, I know you guys have paid about $1,500.
Literally. But of course, it's the right idea that, people should be able to access these tickets, because it's not just the event itself, it's maybe buying, the sparkly outfit, maybe the hotel, the travel, the food.
You do that before you come on the show every day.
I'm in a sparkly dress now for those listening on the radio.
Underneath.
And so, but also, it's not a free market. If one person is buying 100 tickets and then reselling them at 4 times the price, then that's distorting the market. No one benefits other than a couple of dodgy people.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it would be nice, those of us who are not sort of super organised about, oh God, someone's touring in 2 years' time, and at that time on 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, I'm going to organise getting my tickets, having an opportunity to buy them. And again, we've all done that thing where you've bought tickets well in advance, and then you're going, I'm stuck with these 2 tickets, and then I'm going to have to be away for something, or a wedding, and I've got to sell them. Like, how do you legally sell them?
True, but I imagine that the ability to sell 1 or 2 tickets will be fine, but that's not what these people do. You can surely spot in the algorithms the people that are routinely selling them, that are exploiting
they
this.
really mustn't they? I'm wondering if the next person I'm going to speak to has been a victim of this. Jonathan Gullis, who's in for Ian Collins for the next couple of days. Afternoon to you.
Hello, my love. How are you?
Lovely to see you. What do you make of this ticket? It's not the biggest issue in the world, but it is a big gripe for a lot of people.
Look, I'm someone who doesn't regularly attend sort of big gigs or events. I'm kind of a bore who likes to lie on the sofa now and binge watch Netflix these days. I've gone soft since I've left Westminster, sadly, Julia. I must confess. But
can I just point out, you will be able to resell them.
Yeah,
it's just
not
that
at face value.
it can only be
face value
10% or less more, which is just basically a transaction charge.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, there definitely needs to be...
All right, consumer expert in the corner.
I think you and Benjamin are hitting onto something, though. Look, at the end of the day, there are people who are making an absolute fortune by bulk buying, and it is wrong because it means that, those of us... I'm sure my daughter's desperate to go and see some K-pop Demon Hunter gig. I know. I've heard Golden so many times, I'm going to bang my head against the brick wall.
I'm so pleased this is a world I do not have to know about. What are you talking about in your show?
Well, Shabana Mahmood, is she the most conservative Home Secretary we've seen in the last 20 years?
You would have her in your party, wouldn't you?
I'm maybe I need to get the Labour membership form out and start defecting, because I've never heard so much right-wing common sense in my time.
Here's the thing, it all sounds well and good, but realistically, is she going to get any of this done? Because people are fed up with the rhetoric. That's why they didn't trust your line
exactly,
anymore.
and rightly...
That's why, in all respect, you're here.
Yeah, that's right.